Pythagoras, all things are numbers. When we hear the name Pythagoras, most of us recall the famous theorem etched into every textbook. A2 plus B2 = C2. Yet this man was far more than a dry mathematician lost among numbers and right angles. He was a sage, one who perceived within mathematics the very soul of the cosmos, where numbers do not merely measure the world, but create it. His saying, "All things are numbers," is often treated as a cryptic declaration. For Pythagoras, however, it was not a scientific discovery, but a metaphysical vision, a revelation that all things, all souls, all movements of the heavens resound according to a rhythm woven from numbers. He believed that the universe functions like an eternal symphony where every planet, atom, and breath carries a frequency, an invisible harmonia binding all existence together. Number is the ruler of forms and ideas, and the cause of gods and demons. Pythagoras, as cited by Aristotle in Metaphysics, Arshur 5, this was no mere metaphor. In Pythagoras' view, number is the essence of all being. Nothing exists without a mathematical structure within it. If matter is the body of the world, then number is its soul. From this conviction, he and his disciples, the Pythagoreans, formed what might be called a religion of order, in which understanding the mathematical design of things was equivalent to comprehending the divine will of the universe. This philosophy made Pythagoras the first to unite science, religion, and philosophy into a single harmonious whole. He saw beauty in proportion, morality in balance, and truth in rhythm. Humanity itself, he believed, is a harmony of numbers. The body may decay, but the soul endures in the revolving cycles of eternal frequencies. From this perspective, Pythagoras revealed the order hidden beneath chaos. The world, which seems random and unpredictable, in truth follows precise laws. One must simply listen deeply enough to perceive the music of the spheres. In such a vision, mathematics ceases to be a tool and becomes the sacred language through which the universe speaks to humankind. For Pythagoras, philosophy was the journey of returning to that order, a path of purifying the soul until it resonates with the numerical harmony of the cosmos. That is why his school taught not only mathematics, but also ethics, discipline, and meditation. They believed that to live in rhythm, to eat moderately, speak with restraint, and think with clarity was to allow the soul to perform in tune with the universe. The highest goal of music is to connect one's soul to the divine. Pythagorean teaching. Thus we understand that when Pythagoras said, "All things are numbers," he did not speak of lifeless digits. He spoke of a living rhythm, of the hidden beauty behind all forms, and of the conviction that within the order of mathematics, one may encounter God himself. That is why, through the passing of millennia, his philosophy continues to echo through physics, through music, and through humanity's deepest question: what is the meaning of the universe? Who are we within this grand symphony? Pythagoras sowed the seed of faith that to understand number is to understand oneself. In every vibration of sound, in every heartbeat, and in every orbit of the stars, he perceived a sacred equation where philosophy begins not with prayer, but with the silent listening to the eternal order of number. The Seeker's Path. Pythagoras and the quest for divine order. The universe that Pythagoras beheld did not begin in the classrooms of Samos, but with his very first steps away from home, a pilgrimage not only of the body, but of the soul, seeking its way back to the source of truth. After realizing that all things are numbers, that within all things lies a hidden order, he did not stop there. He understood that knowledge cannot be confined within the borders of a single city-state. Thus, Pythagoras left Samos and embarked on a journey across Egypt, Babylon, and Persia, lands where religion, astronomy, and philosophy flowed together like the river of time itself. Legend tells that in Egypt he was taught by priests about the mysteries of sacred geometry, not merely as a means to measure the land, but to measure the soul. Within the white temples along the Nile, Pythagoras gazed upon the pyramids as symbols of humanity's ascent from matter toward the divine. He came to realize that numbers were not merely tools of calculation, but the language of the universe, a universal tongue, by which every civilization, though divided by culture and tongue, was silently speaking with God. Geometry is knowledge of the eternally existent. Plato, Republic 7th, interpreting the thought of Pythagoras. From Egypt he continued to Babylon, the ancient center of astronomy, where humankind had watched the heavens for millennia to understand the cycles of the stars. There Pythagoras learned that the motion of the planets is not random, but follows mathematical rhythms. Each star is a note in the cosmic symphony. It was here that the seed of the music of the spheres began to germinate in his mind, the belief that the order of the cosmos can be heard, if only the soul is still enough to listen. There is geometry in the humming of the strings. There is music in the spacing of the spheres. Attributed to Pythagoras, later recorded by Johannes Kepler in Harmonices Mundi. The years in Persia opened to him yet another depth of understanding where mathematics and spirituality are inseparable. The Magi he met taught that the universe is an infinite circle within which light and darkness, order and chaos forever seek balance. Here Pythagoras perceived the essential truth that all religions, whatever their names, share one faith, that the world can be understood through order. Nothing occurs by chance. It is only that humankind lacks the wisdom to perceive the law. That journey was not merely the accumulation of knowledge, but the purification of a seeker's soul. Each land was a school, each master a mirror, and each civilization an equation waiting to be solved. When Pythagoras returned after more than 20 years of travel, he was no longer the scholar of Samos, but a sage who saw the world through the eyes of the cosmos. He had woven together what once seemed disparate, the astronomy of Babylon, the rituals of Egypt, the moral vision of Persia, all leading to the same conclusion. Mathematics is the sacred structure underlying all religion and nature. In this vision, number is not merely a tool, but the principle of creation, arche. If Heraclitus declared that everything flows, Pythagoras replied, everything flows according to number. The world is indeed a river of becoming, yet not a river of chaos. It is governed by hidden rhythm, by the golden ratios unseen to mortal eyes. Thus, Pythagoras transformed philosophy into the art of seeking harmony between reason and soul, between humanity and the cosmos. From this foundation, he laid the cornerstone for the entire Western philosophical tradition that would follow. Plato, Aristotle, Plotinus, even Kepler and Newton all bear the imprint of his journey. The world is built upon the power of numbers, Pythagorean maxim, cited by Aristotle. Pythagoras left no written works, yet he left a path, a path for those who believe that knowledge arises not only from reason, but also from contemplation, stillness, and reverence before the sacred order of existence. Looking back, we see that his journey mirrors that of humanity itself, from chaos to order, from ignorance to understanding, from fear to harmony. Pythagoras did not find God in temples, but in the hidden architecture of all things. He transformed mathematics, once thought dry and lifeless, into the language of the soul. And today, as we gaze upon the works of science, the vast galaxies, or the melody of a simple song, we can still hear his echo. Measure the world, and you will find God in its harmony. Thus, the journey of Pythagoras is not merely the quest of one man for truth, but the journey of humankind itself, seeking order within its own being. Within each of us still resonates the rhythm he once heard among the Persian sands and the steppes of Memphis, the rhythm of number, of life, and of eternal harmony. The birth of the school of the soul, the Pythagorean brotherhood. From his journey through Egypt, Babylon, and Persia, where he had learned that the universe is a grand harmony woven from order and number, Pythagoras returned to Greece as one who had glimpsed the divine within all forms. Yet the world to which he returned was not one ready to embrace such abstract truths. His Greece, brilliant in art and intellect, remained divided by power, war, and desire. In such an age, Pythagoras did not choose to preach in the agora like other orators. He chose silence. He chose to build a community, a place where men and women would not only learn knowledge, but learn how to live. In Croton, in southern Italy, Pythagoras founded a community he called the Pythagorean Brotherhood, later known by his disciples, with reverence, as the School of the Soul. There, mathematics, music, ethics, and religion were not separate disciplines, but one continuous path, the path of spiritual purification through order and proportion. To calculate is to pray. Pythagorean maxim. This saying captured the essence of Pythagoras' entire philosophy. For him, calculation was not merely an act of intellect, but an act of faith. Every formula, every geometric line, every melody was a means through which humanity communed with the divine, for number is the language of God. The school of silence. Upon entering this community, disciples were forbidden to speak for many years. Silence was not punishment, but the instrument of purification. In silence, one was forced to confront oneself, the noise of one's thoughts, the unrest of one's desires, and one's smallness before the vast order of the cosmos. Pythagoras believed that speech is the vibration of the soul, and only when the mind is balanced can words become true. Therefore he taught, "Be silent, or let thy words be worth more than silence." Pythagoras, the golden verses. That silence created the space for a deeper kind of listening, not to outer sounds, but to the music of the spheres. Students were taught that the universe is not mute, but sings through countless frequencies, rhythms perceptible only to a purified soul. 2. Discipline as the path to liberation. The Pythagorean community practiced strict asceticism. They ate no meat, lived simply, slept little, and devoted most of their hours to study and meditation. This was not to torture the body, but to transform material energy into spiritual light. They believed the soul is imprisoned within the body, and only through discipline can one be freed from that bondage. Pythagoras once said, No man is free who cannot command himself. Reported by Diogenes Laertius, Lives of Eminent Philosophers. In this community, every action from walking, eating, to listening to music was to mirror the order of the universe. They believed that when a person achieved inner harmony, they would resonate with the cosmos, and the soul would become as clear as the sound of the lyre. 3. Geometry, the language of the soul. To Pythagoras, geometry was not the science of lines and right angles, but the art of salvation. A circle was not merely a figure, it was a symbol of perfection. A triangle was not a structure, it was the image of harmony among mind, emotion, and soul. Geometry is the archetype of the beauty of the world. Pythagorean. Saying, cited by Proclus. To study geometry in the school of the soul was to study the order of God. When they drew a shape, they were not merely learning, they were worshiping. Every line, every proportion, every right angle was a prayer in form. From this devotion arose the maxim, to calculate is to pray. In the silent nights of Croton, it was said that Pythagoras would enter the hall carrying a small oil lamp. He would teach not with words, but with numbers and sound. Striking the strings of his lyre, he showed that the distances between musical notes could be expressed through numerical ratios, that musical harmony was the audible reflection of cosmic order. There is geometry in the sound of strings, attributed to Pythagoras. Thus mathematics and music became one. Reason and spirit were no longer divided. Of equality beyond its time. While most Greek schools of the era were closed to women, Pythagoras opened his doors to them. He believed that the order of the universe depends upon the harmony of two principles, masculine and feminine, light and shadow, form and space. Without that balance, the cosmos would lose its divine rhythm. Among his disciples were many remarkable women. Theano, his wife, a learned philosopher who succeeded him. Damo, his daughter entrusted with his sacred writings, and Maia, who wrote on family ethics and education. Pythagoras once said, "There is a good principle which created order, light, and man, and an evil principle which created chaos, darkness, and woman." Attributed, though likely a distortion. His true teaching concerned duality, not inferiority. Contrary to later misinterpretations, Pythagoras did not regard women as inferior, but as an essential half of universal balance. In Croton, women studied beside men and were honored as fellow souls on the same sacred path. Such equality, in the 6th century BCE, was nothing short of revolutionary. A community of order and light. Pythagoras' school of the soul was not merely a place of study, it was a way of life. Each day unfolded like a harmonious cycle. Morning meditation, midday geometry, afternoon music, evening contemplation, and prayer. Learning was not for achievement, but for purification and freedom. The disciples believed that the soul is a moving number, and only when that number finds its balance can the human being unite with the divine. The community's creed declared, "As the eyes are made for astronomy, so the ears are made for harmony." Pythagoras, cited by Iamblichus. They viewed the universe as a vast instrument, and each person as a single string. When each string was tuned rightly, the whole would resound with the symphony of truth. But when one lived out of rhythm, the world itself fell slightly out of harmony. Thus, morality was not a rule imposed, but a responsibility to play in tune with the cosmos. 6. The seed of immortal thought. The Croton community endured quietly for many years, yet its influence spread wide. Philosophers from Plato to Plotinus would later regard Pythagoras as the first to transform philosophy into the art of the soul. In Timaeus, Plato wrote, "God geometrizes continually." Plato, Timaeus. 33. This statement was a direct inheritance of the Pythagorean spirit, the belief that God is ceaselessly drawing the universe through geometry. Pythagoras did not found a new religion, but created a religion of reason, where one worships God through understanding, through order, through number. His school became the model for countless secret societies, monastic orders, and spiritual movements over the millennia, from Neoplatonism and Hermeticism to Freemasonry, all carrying within them the breath of Croton. 7. The legacy of silence. In his final years, as the world grew skeptical of the mystical, Pythagoras chose to retreat into silence. He knew that great truths cannot be defended through argument, they can only be lived. His disciples continued the teaching, believing that their master had merged into the eternal harmonia of the cosmos. Learn to be silent. Let your quiet mind listen and absorb. Pythagoras. And perhaps, in that silence, we too may still hear what he once heard more than 2,000 years ago. The music of the spheres still resounding, the order of numbers still breathing through every pulse of creation. To calculate is to pray, a reminder that in every equation, every proportion, every moment lived with discipline and harmony, we whisper with the universe itself. I understand that all things have order, and within that order, there is God. The philosophy of number. When mathematics becomes the language of the divine. After establishing the school of the soul in Croton, where human beings learn to purify the spirit through geometry, music, and ethics, Pythagoras took one step further along the path of harmony between reason and soul. He turned numbers into living beings, endowed with soul, character, and their own morality. For Pythagoras, numbers were not abstract symbols, but the living essence of the universe. Number is the foundation of every form, every sound, every thought. If God is the speaker, the number is the language he used to create the world. This idea is not merely a mathematical hypothesis, but a profound philosophical system in which ethics, aesthetics, and geometry become three branches of the same root sacred order. Number is the ruler of forms and ideas, and the cause of gods and demons. Aristotle, Metaphysics, Wine 5, quoting Pythagoras. To Pythagoras, each number is a concrete manifestation of a cosmic principle. To understand number is to understand the order of the world, and through it, to understand oneself. I1. Unity, the monad. Everything begins with the number 1, or the monad, the symbol of absolute unity. This is the number of God, of indivisible origin, of the one from which all things are born. Pythagoras regarded 1 not merely as a starting point, but as the first breath of the universe, the principle of the whole of being. Like light passing through a prism, the many proceed from the one, yet that light preserves its original purity. The monad is the principle of all things. From it all proceeds, to it all returns. Pythagorean fragment cited by Iamblichus, Life of Pythagoras. In ethics, The number 1 symbolizes the virtue of simplicity and sincerity, living in unity of word, deed, and soul. In aesthetics, it is the purest form of geometry, where there are no boundaries, only essence. 2. Division, the dyad. If 1 is unity, then 2 is division. It is the first moment in which the universe begins to move. Pythagoras called this the dyad, the symbol of opposites, light and darkness, male and female, order and chaos. Yet he did not deem this division evil. On the contrary, it is necessary for the universe to exist. Without opposition, there can be no interaction. Without contrast, no form. As electricity requires 2 poles to produce light, the universe requires 2 poles to function. Opposition brings concord. Out of discord comes the fairest harmony. Heraclitus, fragment 8. Pythagoras agreed with this view, but went further. The division of the dyad is not only a physical law, but a moral law. Human beings truly mature only when they learn to reconcile the poles within themselves, reason and emotion, desire and soul, the individual and the community. 3. Harmony, the triad. From the conflict of 2 poles, Pythagoras found harmony in the number 3, the triad. This is the number of creation and dynamic balance. In geometry, 3 forms the triangle, the first stable shape of the universe. In theology, it symbolizes the reunion of opposites. Just as harmony arises from 2 different notes to form melody. For him, 3 is the rhythm of life birth, growth, dissolution, and it is also the foundation of transmigration. Everything that exists is in 3, beginning, middle, and end. Pythagorean maxim, cited by Proclus Pythagoras, held that the human soul operates according to this threefold structure: reason, spirit, and desire. When these 3 are in concord, a person attains virtue. When one part overwhelms the others, inner discord begins. Aristotle, 4. Justice, the tetrad. If 3 is harmony, then 4 is justice, the tetrad, the number of perfection in order. Because the square is a figure whose sides are all equal, Pythagoras saw it as the symbol of justice, perfect equity. No bias, no tilt, only absolute balance among forces. Justice is a perfect square number. Pythagorean saying, cited by Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics 5. This saying contains both moral and aesthetic philosophy. For Pythagoras, to live ethically is to live according to the geometry of the soul, balancing giving and receiving, action and consequence, the human being and the cosmos. In the Croton school, disciples were taught that each moral act is a square raised within the heart. The just person is one whose soul is square, not bent, not broken, not evasive. Justice, in his view, does not come from law, but from the inner geometry of the soul. V10, the tetractys, the perfection of the whole. In Pythagoras' system, the number 10 is the most sacred. He called it the tetractys, the sum of the first 4 numbers, 1 plus, 2 plus, 3 plus, 4, 16. The tetractys is the sacred symbol of totality, encompassing both matter and spirit, order and chaos, the human and the divine. His disciples swore oath before the tetractys as a symbol of faith. Bless us, divine number, thou who generated gods and men. O holy, holy tetractys, thou that containest the root and source of the eternally flowing creation. Pythagorean hymn, cited by Iamblichus. The tetractys is drawn as an equilateral triangle of 10 points, representing the total structure of the universe. First row, 1 point, God, the origin. Second row, 2 points, the duality of opposites. Third row, 3 points, harmony. Fourth row, 4 points, matter and order. When added together, we have 10, the symbol of completion, where all things return to their source. For Pythagoras, this was not merely a mathematical system, but a cosmic map of the soul. 6. Ethics, geometry, and aesthetics. 3 pillars of one order. Pythagoras' philosophy of number does not stop at discovering mathematical laws. It is a sacred ethical system. He taught, as number governs the world, so virtue governs the soul. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Sextus Empiricus. Virtue is the geometry of the soul, where every action, emotion, and thought must be balanced like the sides of a square. A distorted soul cannot reflect the order of the universe. Therefore, Pythagoreans studied not only arithmetic, but the art of living, moderation, humility, and harmony. In this view, aesthetics beauty is inseparable from ethics. Beauty is the perfect balance among elements, like a precise equation or a harmonized composition. The good, the true, and the beautiful are 3 different forms of the same sacred numerical order. The beautiful is the true in form, the good is the true in action. Pythagorean Teaching 7, Number and the Human Soul. For Pythagoras, each human being is a living set of numbers, a frequency vibrating within the cosmic symphony. When the soul falls out of balance, that rhythm skews, and we descend into chaos. When we live with order, when reason, emotion, and action are in accord, we return to the primordial rhythm of the cosmos. The philosophy of number, therefore, is not a philosophy of mathematics, but a philosophy of salvation. Human beings are saved not by prayer alone, but by living according to the sacred proportions of the universe. Faith, the legacy of singing numbers. Though Pythagoras departed more than 2,000 years ago, the music of numbers he once heard still resounds throughout every realm of modern life. In the structures of classical music, in the golden ratio of architecture, in the planetary cycles described by astronomy, and in the laws of physics, all bearing the imprint of the belief that all things are numbers. From Plato to Kepler, from Newton to Einstein, seekers have continued to search for the language of God through number, that which Pythagoras heard, lived, and transformed into a religion of the soul. Thus, his philosophy of number is not mere knowledge, it is the hymn of order, the cosmic psalm that every soul can hear, if only it is still enough. In today's world, amid disorder and conflict, Pythagoras' thought reminds us that justice is still the perfect square, and that within every number lies a prayer that has never ceased. To calculate is to pray. The theorem and the birth of cosmic order, when the triangle became a prayer. After Pythagoras had unveiled the philosophy of number, where each unit of mathematics possessed its own soul and virtue, his path of thought advanced one step further. He transformed the abstraction of numbers into forms that could be seen, touched, and meditated upon. In that moment, geometry ceased to be mere science and became the visible language of God. And the summit of this revelation was the Pythagorean theorem, a simple equation that carries within it the soul of cosmic order. The universe begins to make sense when we see that number and form are one. Attributed to Pythagoras, reported by Iamblichus, Life of Pythagoras, when the theorem became revelation. In the ancient world, While nations still use geometry to measure land and build walls, Pythagoras saw within the right triangle a sacred revelation. He discovered that among its three sides exists an absolute relationship. H stage A2 plus B2 C2. What appeared to others as a mere tool for measurement became, to Pythagoras, proof of the existence of an eternal rational order, a law independent of time, language, or religion. If the universe were chaotic, how could such perfect precision exist? Thus, when he discovered the theorem, he did not merely see a formula, he saw God in the form of number. Number rules the universe. Pythagoras, cited by Philolaus, for him, the theorem was evidence that the cosmos is woven from reason, that beneath chaos lies order, and that behind every shape resides a mathematical soul. 2. The right triangle. Geometry of the soul. Pythagoras taught that every form holds spiritual meaning. Among them, the right triangle was the most sacred, for it symbolized the harmony among the three principles of the universe. The first leg, body, matter. The visible world, the realm of form. The second leg, mind, spirit. The invisible realm, the power of reason and thought. The hypotenuse, soul, the bridge that unites both poles in perfect balance. Thus the right triangle became a symbol of harmony, where body and mind do not oppose, but uphold one another. Pythagoras saw in it the moral structure of the human being. To reach virtue, the hypotenuse, one must balance body and intellect. Geometry is knowledge of the eternally existent. Plato, Republic 7th, echoing the Pythagorean doctrine. That statement, though written by Plato, carried the spirit of Pythagoras. Geometry is not merely a tool for knowing, but a path for right living. 3. Proof as an act of prayer. In the School of the Soul at Croton, every student who drew a right triangle began with a silent ritual. They washed their hands, lit an oil lamp, and traced each line with the reverence of one entering a temple. Demonstrating the theorem was not a lesson in mathematics, but a form of meditation. Each time they proved it, they were reminded, you do not prove the theorem, you rediscover the harmony of the cosmos. They believed that in this process, the human soul vibrated in unison with the rhythm of the universe, for this theorem was the first rational melody mankind could hear with the mind. Ancient Pythagorean writings record a prayer recited before the drawing began. O holy triangle, thou who revealest the balance of heaven, grant us clarity of mind and purity of heart. Pythagorean invocation, fragment cited by Porphyry. In the stillness of Croton, the triangle became a symbol of contemplation, a sacred hymn written in lines and proportions. 4. When geometry became the architecture of faith. From this theorem, Pythagoras and his followers developed a distinctive architectural style. Pythagorean architecture, where every structure was built upon sacred proportion. Temples, lecture halls, and sanctuaries were designed on the foundation of perfectly balanced right triangles, for they believed that to live within correct proportion is to live closer to God. Proportion is not only beauty, it is truth made visible. Attributed to Pythagoras, cited by Vitruvius in De Architectura, such proportions were not aimed solely at physical symmetry, but at spiritual equilibrium. In every wall and dome, they perceived a reflection of that divine theorem. Architecture became a prayer in stone, where each brick and right angle was a psalm of gratitude for the order of the universe. Scholars later believed that Pythagoras' principles profoundly influenced ancient Greek architecture, especially the Parthenon, where the ratios of height, width, and diagonal embodied the divine right triangle. V. The theorem and ethics. When mathematics taught humanity how to live, Pythagoras saw in geometry not only order, but a philosophy of living. For him, proving the right triangle was a lesson in virtue and inner balance. The three sides symbolize the three qualities of the wise soul: knowledge, understanding the law; discipline, maintaining balance; faith, trusting in an order greater than oneself. Virtue is harmony, Pythagorean saying, cited by Iamblichus. In his view, ethics was not a set of commandments, but the harmony among the parts of the soul, just as the sides of a triangle must remain in exact proportion for the whole to exist. Thus, the Pythagorean theorem became a metaphor for the ideal character. The virtuous person is one whose reason, emotion, and action align in perfect order. 6. The birth of cosmic law. In ancient religion, gods were often seen as the cause of every event: thunder, disease, or fortune. But with his theorem, Pythagoras inaugurated a new age, the age of reason. The theorem revealed that there are laws eternal and unchanging, even without divine intervention. Instead of pleading with the gods, humanity could understand and align with these laws. It was a monumental transition from myth to philosophy, from blind faith to illumination through reason. God ever geometrizes. Plato, Timaeus. 33. Interpreting Pythagoras' thought. The cosmos, for Pythagoras, is a geometric architecture of God, where every phenomenon from planetary orbits to the heartbeat follows mathematical law. The right triangle was but one fragment of this infinite design. Through this insight, modern science was born: astronomy, physics, and acoustics, all tracing their lineage to that same flame. When Kepler said, "The harmony of the world is made manifest in geometry," or when Einstein wrote, "God does not play dice with the universe," they were continuing the fire that Pythagoras had kindled more than 2 millennia earlier. 7. The music of geometry. Pythagoras often said that the theorem lived not only in lines, but in sound. He demonstrated that when a string is divided in the ratio 3.4.5, the classic Pythagorean triangle, it produces a perfect chord. To him, this proved that the universe is a mathematical symphony. Every object, whether stone, water, or soul, vibrates according to numerical proportion. The Pythagorean theorem was the fundamental note of that cosmic symphony. There is music in the spacing of the spheres. Attributed to Pythagoras, quoted by Johannes Kepler. From then on, philosophy and music were no longer separate. One who understood the theorem not only grasped mathematics, but could hear the song of the planets, the harmony of reason and soul. 8. Legacy. When the triangle became the symbol of faith and science, Pythagoras is long gone, yet his triangle still stands in every classroom, every monument, and within the human mind itself. Whenever we look at a right triangle, we see not a simple geometric figure, but evidence of cosmic order. The theorem has transcended mathematics to become a symbol of the unity between reason and spirit, between humanity and eternal law. Today, in architecture, art, science, and music, we continue to build upon the same truth Pythagoras saw in the lamplight of Croton. Balance is never an accident. It is the law of the universe. Measure the world and you will find God in its harmony. Pythagorean aphorism. When we write that theorem today, A2 plus B2 is C2. Perhaps we are not merely learning a formula, but reciting an ancient prayer. A prayer not of words, but of orderly silence, echoing from Croton through the ages. To understand the triangle is to understand the soul of the universe. The music of the universe. Harmony of the spheres. From the previous chapter, we saw Pythagoras uncover in the right triangle the sacred order of the cosmos, where human being, matter, and soul are made one. But for him, that was not the final destination. For if number and geometry can reveal the world's order, then sound is the very soul of that order, the heartbeat of the universe resounding within silence. And from this insight, his greatest idea was born, harmony of the spheres. A flash of intuition when knowledge springs from sound. Legend tells that one night Pythagoras passed by a smithy. He heard hammers striking anvils. Some blows sounded harmonious, others harsh. Entering, he realized the cause lay not in the force of the strike, but in the weight of each hammer. Some weighed twice as much, or half again, as much, or 3/4 of another, and it was precisely these ratios that produced consonance or dissonance. Curious, he took up a string and experimented. When he shortened the string to half its length, the pitch rose exactly 1 octave, 2-1. At a ratio of 3.2, the interval became a fifth, and with 4.3, a fourth. And so he grasped something no one had yet imagined. Number is the cause of harmony. Pythagoras, cited by Iamblichus, Life of Pythagoras. Sound is not accidental. It obeys mathematical law. And from this Pythagoras affirmed, if music, what we can hear, already follows numerical order, then the universe, the music we cannot yet hear, must also move by the same principle. 2. From a blacksmith's hammer to the symphony of the cosmos. From this discovery, Pythagoras developed one of antiquity's most magnificent and poetic ideas, harmony of the spheres. He envisioned the planets of the solar system. In his time, only 7 heavenly bodies were known, moving along precise mathematical paths, and in their motion, producing vast frequencies of sound. Each planet is a cosmic string, stretched across the void, and their motions resonate into the invisible symphony of creation. There is geometry in the humming of the strings. There is music in the spacing of the spheres. Attributed to Pythagoras, quoted by Johannes Kepler in Harmonices Mundi, 1619. According to Pythagoras, those sounds are too immense, too vast for the human ear to perceive. We live within that symphony as fish swim in water, bathed in sound without realizing it. Only purified souls through meditation and a life ordered aright can hear that music with the heart rather than the ears. 3. Music, astronomy, and ethics. 3 wings of one soul. In Pythagorean philosophy, music is not merely an art, but a way of understanding the universe and the human being. He held that music, ethics, and astronomy are not 3 separate fields, but 3 faces of a single truth. Music expresses harmony to the ear. It is mathematics that sings. Astronomy expresses harmony to the eye. It is the music of the stars. Ethics expresses harmony through action. It is the music of the soul. The universe is not chaos, but music made visible. Pythagorean teaching, recorded by Boethius in De Institutione Musica. This statement is the core of the entire Pythagorean system. The world is not disorder, but a grand composition, where every creature, every star, every breath is a note in the endless melody of God. Thus his students did not learn only to hear, they learned to live as a note tuned to proper frequency, a soul out of rhythm, living without virtue, is like a wrong note in the cosmic harmony, creating distortion within itself and the world. 4. Music is medicine for the soul. In the School of the Soul at Croton, Pythagoras used music as a rite of healing. Each morning, disciples listened to pieces with slow, bright rhythms to awaken the soul. In the evening, they listened to gentle chords to cleanse the mind of fear and desire. Music is the medicine of the soul. Pythagoras, cited by Cicero in Tusculan Disputations. These compositions were not for entertainment, but to restore inner order, helping the soul to retune itself to the universe's frequency. When the human spirit is disturbed, Pythagoras said, "It is not reason that is broken, but harmony. It is the inner concord that has gone awry." By listening and adjusting sound, we learn to listen to ourselves, to hear the voice of sacred order rising from within. V. The universe. As a symphony from Kepler to the modern age. 2 millennia later, Johannes Kepler, the great astronomer of the Renaissance, rediscovered Pythagoras' insight in Harmonices Mundi, 1619. He showed that planetary orbits are not circles, but ellipses, yet still obey harmonic ratios of velocity. Kepler called this the celestial symphony. The harmony of the world is made manifest in geometry and numbers. Johannes Kepler, Harmonices Mundi, 1619. Kepler not only revived Pythagorean thought, he raised it from mysticism into a science of the universe. And when Newton discovered the law of gravitation, he merely continued the belief that the motions of the heavens are expressions of a grand music written in formulae. Even in the 20th century, Albert Einstein, who reshaped humanity's view of the cosmos, said, "We are all dancing to a mysterious tune, intoned in the distance by an invisible piper." Albert Einstein, 1929 interview. Though the language has changed, the spirit remains Pythagorean, the conviction that the universe is not random, but a song sounding forever. 6. The harmony of the soul. Ethics within music. For Pythagoras, to understand music is to understand how to live in order. Every human action is a sound, every thought a vibration. When the soul is anxious, we produce noise. When we live rightly, we contribute to the music of God. If you want to know if a man is virtuous, listen not to his words, but to the harmony of his life. Pythagorean saying. At the Croton school, they believed music not only reflects the soul, but shapes the soul. The way one plays an instrument reveals one's inner order. Music is not merely art, but ethics in audible form. Therefore, Pythagoreans lived simply and temperately, always striving to keep time between material life and the spirit, as a musician must keep the beat, lest the whole piece go astray. 7. The universe is music made visible. In Pythagoras' teaching, the world is a composition the eye can behold. Light is a high frequency of sound. Color is sound transfigured into form. The cosmos is not divided between science and spirituality, for all phenomena are different strata of vibration within the same melody. The universe is not chaos, but music made visible, Pythagorean doctrine, preserved by Boethius. This is the manifesto of an entire philosophy. It affirms that everything possesses order, and that order is beautiful. And when we perceive beauty in a flower, a star, or in another's gaze, we are hearing an invisible song. And when we lose virtue to greed or hatred, we have fallen out of rhythm with the universe, producing noise in the soul. The task of philosophy, therefore, is not merely to understand, but to bring humanity back to the primordial melody. 8. The legacy of the soundless symphony. Pythagoras' harmony of the spheres has outlived its age, not only in philosophy, but across the arts and sciences. From Bach, who described his works as geometry and sound, to Holst's astral symphonies in the planets, from Gothic architecture to the structure of DNA, all conceal the belief that beauty is the sign of order. Pythagoras laid foundations not only for theoretical music, but for a way of life in which we learn to listen to the world with both heart and reason. Today, when modern science speaks of quantum vibrations, of the frequencies of space-time, or of the sound of the universe captured from gravitational waves, we are merely touching again what Pythagoras heard in the hammer's ring more than 2,000 years ago. 9. Coda harmony within silence. If to calculate is to pray, as Pythagoras taught, then to listen is to awaken. When we truly listen not only with the ear, but with the soul, we hear a music beyond every instrument and every age, the symphony of the universe. And in that symphony, each of us is a note, a small note, but indispensable. When we live in order, we sing our proper pitch. When we live in disorder, we go astray, and the music loses its perfection. He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 6:16. Pythagoras taught us not only about sound, but how to listen to life. It is a music we cannot hear, and yet it resounds in every heartbeat, in wind and light, in the silence of the deep night where the universe forever sings its own song. The universe is not chaos, it is music made visible. The celestial order, Pythagoras, and the birth of the cosmos. From the preceding chapters, we have followed the journey through which Pythagoras discovered the language of the universe. Number, geometry, music, all culminating in the starry heavens. If the harmony of the spheres was the soul of his philosophy, then astronomy was its body, where he articulated one of humanity's most daring ideas. The Earth is not the center of the universe. Thousands of years before Copernicus, when most of the world still believed that the gods dragged the stars across the sky, Pythagoras envisioned a cosmos governed by mathematical order and the Earth as but one voice in a vast celestial symphony. I, the central fire, the soul of the universe. According to the writings of Philolaus, one of his direct disciples, Pythagoras, taught that at the center of the universe lies not the earth, but a central fire. This fire is the symbol of divinity, the hearth of the universe, the sacred flame of all life, around which every planet revolves in perfect order. In the middle of all things burns the central fire, the house of Zeus, the mother of gods, and the basis of life. Philolaus, On Nature, Fragment 7. In the 6th century BCE, such a notion was a revolution of consciousness. It shattered the belief that humankind, or Earth, was the center of creation, affirming instead that all things move around an eternal center beyond our reach. For Pythagoras, The central fire was not the physical sun, but the symbol of the divine mind, the source of light, order, and proportion. He saw the planets as souls, circling that radiant intelligence in the dance of eternal law. The fire at the center of the world is the seat of the divine power that gives life to all things. Pythagorean teaching, cited by Aristotle, de Caelo II. 13.2. The universe as a living instrument. Building upon the idea of the music of the spheres, Pythagoras gazed at the heavens not with the eyes of a surveyor, but with the heart of a listener. He believed that each planet moved according to harmonious ratios, like the strings of an immense celestial instrument. Each orbit produced a unique velocity, a pitch of sound in the universal scale. As they circled the central fire, their motions together formed a cosmic symphony, the music of the spheres inaudible to the human ear, yet perceptible to the soul. The motions of the heavens are according to number and proportion. The world itself is a harmony. Pythagorean fragment cited by Iamblichus, Life of Pythagoras. This vision transformed Greek philosophy. The heavens ceased to be a mythic stage where gods stirred storms and passions, and became instead a lawful instrument, where the divine acted not through whim, but through mathematics. From myth to reason. A revolution of thought before Pythagoras, the Greeks believed the sun was the fiery chariot of Helios, the moon, the torch of Artemis, and the stars the souls of fallen heroes. But when Pythagoras looked upward, he saw not capricious gods, but order. The universe is not governed by caprice, but by harmony. Pythagorean maxim. This marked the first great turning point of Western thought, the passage from mythic faith to scientific and philosophical inquiry. Pythagoras planted the seed of what Plato would later call cosmos, a Greek word meaning order, harmony, and beauty. Before him, cosmos meant adornment, something arranged beautifully. After him, it became the concept of the universe as a work of art, structured by divine intelligence. The universe is a cosmos, not a chaos. Pythagoras, cited by Aetius, Placida Philosophorum Securum 7. From that moment onward, humankind ceased to speak of the world of the gods, and began to speak of the cosmos, the universe of order. 4. Astronomy as the path to knowing God. In Pythagorean philosophy, observing the heavens was not merely science, it was a spiritual pilgrimage. Watching the planets revolve around the central fire, he saw the image of the human soul always circling the light of truth, though often straying into darkness. To study the stars is to study the mind of God. Pythagorean. Saying Pythagoras taught that, just as the planets cannot escape their orbits, the human soul cannot escape the law of order. When we live out of harmony, the soul drifts away from its center of light and falls into shadow like a planet gone astray. Thus, astronomy was not merely the study of celestial positions, but the study of our own place within the universe. Humanity is not the center, but a part of the grand design. To recognize this is the first step toward philosophical humility, the virtue Pythagoras regarded as the soul of wisdom. V. The universe as a work of divine art. Among Pythagoras's greatest gifts was his vision of the universe as a work of art. If every natural thing possesses proportion, symmetry, and rhythm, then the cosmos itself must be the perfect creation of an invisible artist, one who paints not with pigments, but with equations. God geometrizes continually. Plato, Timaeus 33. Plato's words echo Pythagoras' revelation. In this vision, the universe was not created out of nothing, but architected by reason. The divine mind did not create through emotion, but through mathematical order, where beauty and goodness are one and the same. When Pythagoras gazed upon the night sky, he did not see randomness, but art in motion, the planets moving with perfect precision, like an orchestra keeping flawless time. To him, each star was a note, each orbit a melody, and the whole the music of God. 6. The Pythagorean cosmos. Living, soulful, and ordered. Unlike many thinkers of his age who saw the universe as inert matter, Pythagoras believed that the cosmos is alive. Every planet, every element, every soul is a cell in the body of the universe vibrating, breathing, and singing in unison. The world is a living being, endowed with a soul and intelligence. Pythagorean doctrine, cited by Diogenes Laertius. This belief profoundly influenced Plato, Plotinus, and the entire lineage of Greek philosophy. For them, God was not distant but present in the very order of the universe, and the human soul was not separate from the world, but a fragment of the world's soul, the anima mundi. 7. The legacy of cosmic order. Looking back, Pythagoras was not merely a mathematician or philosopher. He was the first to teach humanity to see the universe with both reason and reverence. Through him, we learned that beauty lies not in divine whim, but in law, that wonder is not born of miracles, but of proportion and harmony already written into nature. Wonder begins when we see order in what seemed chaotic. Pythagorean aphorism. From Pythagoras to Copernicus, Kepler, Newton, and Einstein. All who unveiled the fabric of the cosmos began with the same belief. That order exists, and man's task is to discover it. When Copernicus published De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium, 1543, he wrote, "I am following the footsteps of the divine Pythagoras." Nicolaus Copernicus, Preface to De Revolutionibus, 1543. And when Kepler formulated his laws of planetary motion, he described the universe as a geometric creation of God. Once again, the echo from Croton resounded across the ages. 8. Epilogue. Eternal order in motion. More than 2,500 years have passed since Pythagoras walked the earth. Yet his vision still revolves around us in the orbits of planets, in the vibrations of electrons, in waves of sound and light, and even in the beating of the human heart. From the central fire of the universe to the flame of reason within the human mind, all things follow the same law. All things are numbers, and all numbers are harmony. Pythagoras. His universe is not a distant place, but an endless symphony of light and order. We are not mere spectators, but participants, each of us, a note in that grand composition. Every action, every thought, every heartbeat is the vibration of the cosmos within us. And perhaps, if we listen closely beyond the noise of the world, we may still hear the melody that Pythagoras once heard. Beneath the stars of Croton, the universe is not ruled by gods, but by harmony, the everlasting music of reason. The immortal soul, the eternal equation of existence. After Pythagoras unveiled the grand vision of cosmic order, where the planets move according to harmonious and rational laws, his thought returned to the order of the human being, the inner world, where invisible orbits and laws no less exact also exist. If the universe is a vast instrument, then the human soul is one of its strings. And like every sound in the cosmic symphony, the soul never truly disappears. It only moves, transforms, and resonates endlessly within the unceasing flow of existence. That is the central, most sacred belief in Pythagoras' philosophy. The soul is immortal. I, the soul, the eternal number. In God's equation, Pythagoras believed that all things are number, but not numbers lifeless on a ledger, rather living numbers, capable of vibration, morality, and meaning. In that vision, the human soul is the highest number, for it bears the capacity to reflect the sacred order of the entire cosmos. The soul is a number moving itself. Aristotle, De Anima I2, recording Pythagoras' teaching. The seemingly abstract statement is the doorway to the entire Pythagorean worldview. For him, the soul is not a fixed entity, but a living oscillation, a wave that moves ceaselessly within the equation of the universe. Like the planets circling the central fire, the soul revolves around the light of truth, and that journey never ends. Pythagoras called this journey metempsychosis, the transmigration of the soul. After departing the body, the soul continues to exist, entering another mode of life in order to learn, refine, and adjust its vibration until it attains perfect harmony with the cosmos. All things change, but nothing perishes. The soul passes from one dwelling to another. Ovid, Metamorphoses, 15th, Shu 65166, interpreting Pythagorean thought, Adao, life as a school. Where the soul learns the calculus of virtue, Pythagoras regarded life as a cosmic classroom. In it, every experience, sweet or bitter, is an ethical equation the soul must solve to draw nearer to perfection. As long as man ignores the law of harmony, he must return to learn it again. Pythagorean teaching, cited by Iamblichus, in his view, human beings do not live to flee error, but to understand the order hidden within it. Every action, choice, and emotion helps determine the soul's frequency of vibration. When we live out of time selfishly, disorderly, breaking harmony, the soul strays from the center of light and must return to the human cycle to relearn the lesson until it understands that balance is the law of the universe and virtue is the geometry of the soul. Thus life becomes a sacred equation. In it, actions are variables, consequences are results, and cosmic justice is the absolute constant. No one can escape that equation, for as Pythagoras said, the law of harmony binds gods and men alike. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Diogenes Laertius III. The soul's journey from darkness to light. Pythagoras envisioned the soul as an endless traveler, beginning its journey in the material world, the realm of chaos, desire, and ignorance, then gradually ascending to higher planes of understanding. Each rebirth is a new level of comprehension, a chance to retake the exam the soul once failed. The soul is purified by successive lives, as iron by the fire. Pythagorean saying, cited by Porphyry. In this process, suffering is not punishment, but a refining flame, burning away the dross of ego so that the soul attains transparency, able to reflect the light of truth. When the soul reaches that state, Pythagoras called it catharsis, purification. It no longer needs to return to the world, but dissolves into the sacred symphony of the cosmos. Because of this belief, Pythagoras taught his disciples to live purely, practice abstinence, keep silence, and meditate, not only to discipline the body, but to lighten the soul, easing its ascent after it leaves the flesh. Do not feed on flesh, for it binds the soul to the cycle of birth. Empedocles, on nature, fragment 17, inheriting Pythagoras' thought of the soul and music. When ethics becomes harmony, if in the universe, Pythagoras discerned harmony among the heavenly spheres, then in the human being he found harmony within the soul. In his philosophy, music is the mirror of the soul. It can heal or it can detune a person's inner vibration. Music is the harmony of the soul made audible. Pythagorean teaching, cited by Boethius. He believed that when the soul loses balance through anger, lust, or greed, it is like a string gone out of tune. Our task is to retune that sound to match the universe's melody through ethics, discipline, and meditation. Salvation, according to Pythagoras, does not come from ritual or imploring the gods, but from the harmony between the soul and order. One who lives harmoniously plays the right note in the music of God. Vi, death, the doorway to a new chapter. Pythagoras did not fear death, for to him, death is not an ending, but a transformation. Death is the moment when the soul changes bodies, like a student moving to another class after completing one stage of the lesson. As a man casts off worn garments and puts on new ones, so the soul leaves its body to dwell elsewhere. The Bhagavad Gita, Sekus 22, though not Greek, it reflects the consonant spirit Pythagoras taught. In this light, the fear of death is the mark of forgetting our immortal nature. When we live in harmony, knowing the soul belongs to the order of the universe, death becomes a return, a homecoming to the light to which it always belonged. Pythagoras once told his students in Croton, "No soul is ever born or dies, but only changes dwelling places." Pythagorean fragment, preserved by Cicero in Tusculan Disputations, March 16. Thus the wise do not lament death. They reverence it as a doorway to a new lesson. 6. The moral equation. The mathematics of action. In Pythagorean philosophy, ethics is mathematics put into practice. If every action has a consequence, then to live ethically is to live according to the universe's equation. There is no reward or punishment, only the outcome of proportion. Justice is a perfect square number. Pythagorean maxim, cited by Aristotle, Nicomachean. Ethics 5. For him, justice is the geometry of the soul. Every distortion, every excess breaks that form. When people are greedy, lie, or destroy life, they do not merely wrong others. They warp the mathematical structure of themselves. Conversely, when they live uprightly, with compassion and restraint, their souls gradually return to a square, perfected form, ready to merge with the sacred tetractys, where all souls unite in absolute balance. 7. The soul and the universe. Two sides of one equation. In Pythagorean thought, there is no divide between microcosm and macrocosm, between human being and universe. The soul is an image of the cosmos, a microcosm that reflects the order of the macrocosm. Man is the measure of all harmonies, for he contains the same numbers that shape the stars. Pythagorean doctrine, cited by Iamblichus. This means, if the universe is structured by proportion and harmony, then the human soul operates by the same principle. When we live in discord, we sever our resonance with the cosmos. When we live aright, we restore communion. Pythagoras called this the return to the one, the journey back to the sacred origin, where the soul dissolves into the primordial number, the monad, the symbol of God, and absolute unity. 8. Seeds of influence. From Pythagoras to all humanity. Pythagoras' teaching on the immortal, transmigrating soul inspired Plato, Socrates, Plotinus, and later religious philosophical traditions. Plato wrote in Phaedo, "The soul is immortal and imperishable, and our true task is to care for it." Plato, Phaedo, 106. This is Pythagoras' direct legacy. Because of him, Western philosophy first considered the soul not as a vague mystery, but as a structured reality with laws something to be understood, trained, and purified. That influence crossed Greek borders. It met the ancient philosophies of the East India, Egypt, China, where people likewise believed that life is a circle, not a line. And across millennia, the doctrine continues to resound through religions, spiritual sciences, and humanistic philosophies. 9. Conclusion. The soul as an equation that never closes. When night fell over Croton, it is said Pythagoras often sat in silence, gazing at the heavens not to divine, but to hear his soul join the music of the stars. He understood that death is only a change of tempo, while the cosmic symphony goes on without end. The soul is immortal. It moves from life to life as number moves from form to form. Pythagorean fragment cited by Iamblichus. Thus his entire philosophy may be summed up in a simple yet profound image. Life is the sacred equation, and the soul is the immortal number that never ceases to seek balance. Every time we love, forgive, learn, or endure suffering, we solve a little more of that equation, an ethical problem in the universe's great school. When all variables are harmonized, the equation closes and the soul returns to its eternal origin. Light, order, and music. The soul is not a visitor in the universe. It is the universe learning to know itself. Purification through discipline. The path of harmonious ascension. After speaking of the immortal soul, the sacred nucleus that Pythagoras believed moves through countless lives to learn and refine his philosophy did not remain theory. For Pythagoras, knowledge of the cosmos and the soul has value only when it is lived and practiced each day. If the universe is a symphony of order, then the human being must become a well-tuned instrument so that every breath, every thought, every action resounds in harmony with the cosmos. From this conviction, he established a system of purification through discipline, a regimen of body-mind training meant to restore the soul's harmony. This was not a closed religion, but a science of self-mastery, where every deed carries an ethical frequency, and the task of the human being is to tune it until it vibrates at the frequency of the divine. I. Discipline the bridge between the human being and cosmic order. In the School of the Soul at Croton, Pythagoras taught that one can only enter the music of the universe when one's own being no longer falls out of time. Discipline, therefore, is not coercion, but the art of fine-tuning the inner vibration. No man is free who cannot command himself. Reported by Diogenes Laertius, Lives of Eminent Philosophers. The freedom Pythagoras spoke of is not the freedom to do anything whatsoever, but freedom from inner chaos, from desire, fear, and the turbulence of emotion. Only when a person masters themselves do they truly participate in the order of the cosmos, where all things move by reason and harmony. Pythagoras believed the human body is like an instrument. If the string is too tight, it snaps. If too loose, it will not sound. An ethical and purified life is the art of keeping the string at the proper tension. 2. Purification through 4 pillars: vegetarianism, silence, sunrise meditation, and evening self-examination. 1. Vegetarianism, nourishment through purity. In the Pythagorean order, vegetarianism was the first and most sacred rule. They abstained from meat, avoided strong drink, and shunned foods considered heavy for the soul. Do not feed on flesh, for it binds the soul to the wheel of birth. Empedocles, On Nature, fragment 117. Pythagoras held that by eating meat, one absorbs the energy of violence, clouding and weighing down the soul. Vegetarianism was not merely for bodily health, but a spiritual right, enabling the body to become a clean temple for the soul. As long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. He who sows the seeds of murder cannot reap joy or love. Attributed to Pythagoras, recorded by Porphyry, food, in his view, carries its own frequency. Vegetables, grains, and honey things born of the sun's light carry a higher energy, while meat bears a lower vibration. Thus, each meal became a ritual of frequency tuning, bringing the soul nearer to the vibration of light and harmony. 2. Silence, the teacher of wisdom. One of Croton's distinctive disciplines was silence prolonged over many years. New students, called akousmatikoi, listeners, were required to remain completely silent for at least 5 years before being allowed to speak in class. Be silent, or let thy words be worth more than silence. The golden verses of Pythagoras. Silence is not repression, but a form of listening. In silence, the mind's agitation subsides, and the soul begins to hear the music of the spheres, what the physical ear cannot detect. Pythagoras believed that speech holds the power to create or destroy order. A word released without restraint can throw the ethical rhythm out of balance. Thus, keeping silence purifies the frequency of speech, so that every utterance thereafter bears the weight of truth. 3. Sunrise meditation, setting the soul's rhythm to the sun. Each morning, before sunrise, disciples gathered outdoors, faced east, and meditated in the dawn light. Honor the rising sun, for it reminds the soul of its own ascent. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Iamblichus. The morning meditation did not seek favors, but synchronization with the rhythm of the universe. In the day's first light, they practiced steady breathing and held the mind in absolute quiet in order to feel the invisible motion of energy. Pythagoras taught that, as the planets move by proportion, so must human breath move by rhythm. By regulating the breath, one brings blood, energy, and thought to vibrate at the cosmos's proper frequency. Sunrise meditation is thus a science of breath, a bridge between finite body and infinite soul. 4. Evening self-examination, the soul's daily arithmetic. At nightfall, before sleep, each disciple sat in stillness to review the entire day. They asked themselves 3 sacred questions taught by Pythagoras. Where have I gone wrong? What have I done? What duty have I neglected? The golden verses of Pythagoras, lines 40-42, this rite was regarded as the daily moral calculus, where one balances the equation of the soul. No confession to another was required, No punishment, only absolute honesty with oneself. In silence, they recalculated their deeds as a luthier tunes an instrument. What was off was adjusted. What was true was kept. Night after night, the soul became balanced, precise, and clear. Third, harmony in every breath, the ethical frequency of life. For Pythagoras, every action, however small, carries an ethical frequency. Words, glances, footsteps, even breath itself. Each manifests either order or disorder. In everything there is number, and number is harmony. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Aristotle, Metaphysics, ORM 5. Thus, to live ethically is not to obey external codes, but to keep an inner rhythm. A gentle word carries a high frequency that spreads harmony. A harsh word detunes the soul's vibration. Temperate eating synchronizes the body with the universe's cycles. Greed and lust thicken and darken our frequency. Pythagoras taught that a pure soul is a rightly tuned soul, and our task is nothing less than to correct the phase shift between ourselves and the cosmos. IV. Silence, vegetarianism, and self-examination. 3 movements of one composition. Croton's 3 chief disciplines, silence, vegetarianism, and self-examination, formed a cycle of purification. Vegetarianism cleanses the body. Silence cleanses speech. Self-examination cleanses intention. When these 3 levels are refined, one enters the state of harmony, where body, mind, spirit no longer stand apart. In this state, one no longer merely studies the way, but becomes the way, a living measure of the universe's rhythm. He who brings harmony into himself brings harmony into the world. Pythagorean. Saying, Pythagorean purification does not flee life. It beholds God within life. A meal performed in quiet is also prayer. A conscious breath is meditation. A timely measured deed is a small enlightenment of truth. V. Discipline is not a shackle, but the road to freedom. Many later misunderstood Pythagoras as an austere ascetic. In truth, he saw discipline as the art of freedom. Freedom does not arise from smashing limits, but from living in the right tempo of order. As the musician is not free when playing out of time, the human being cannot be free while living against the laws of the universe. Freedom is obedience to the law of one's own nature. Pythagorean aphorism. Thus purification is no longer mortification, but the joy of concord. Pythagoreans did not withdraw from life. They lived within it with total awareness of every breath, every deed, every thought, so that each day became a lesson, each moment a note in the eternal symphony of the cosmos. 6. In rhythm with the universe, the ultimate aim of purification. The aim of all rites is not moral perfection in a social sense, but resonance with the universe. When body, emotion, and mind vibrate in one harmonious rhythm, the soul becomes transparent, reflecting the light of the divine mind. When the soul has been purified, it becomes a mirror of the divine order. Pythagorean teaching, cited by Iamblichus. In that moment, one no longer seeks God, for he is born within one's very heartbeat. Purification becomes a natural condition, no longer an effort. One does not plead for peace, for one has become peace. 7. The legacy of Pythagorean discipline. From the simple rites of the Croton order, the idea of purification through discipline influenced the entire Greek and later Western tradition. Plato, speaking of the philosopher, took up its spirit. The philosopher is one who practices dying. that the soul may be freed from the body's confusion. Plato, Phaedo 67th. Pythagoras' thought also flowed into Eastern monastic lineages, where meditation, abstinence, and silence serve as instruments of purification. Across millennia, it has been reborn in many forms: modern mindfulness practices, yoga, meditation, and humanistic psychology, all springing from the same root. Discipline is the path back to the harmonious self. 8th. Conclusion: the breath of order. In Croton's still nights, with sea winds drifting past, Pythagoras' disciples often meditated beside small oil lamps. No one spoke, no one asked for anything. They quietly inhaled, exhaled, in a single rhythm. For they believed that to breathe rightly is already to move in time with the universe. The universe breathes through man. To live rightly is to breathe in tune. Pythagorean fragment, unverified, traditional. When discipline becomes rhythm, when silence becomes music, when breath becomes prayer, purification is complete. No opposition remains between body and mind. Between human and God, only one single composition of perfect harmony. And perhaps this is the deepest message Pythagoras left behind. To purify oneself is not to escape the world, but to become the world in its purest rhythm. The mathematics of morality, geometry of the soul. From the previous chapter, we saw that Pythagoras regarded discipline and harmony as the path to purifying the soul, enabling human beings to merge with the sacred rhythm of the universe. But purification, in his thought, was not the final aim. It was only preparation for something deeper. To live in order, to live so that every action, every emotion, every decision we make reflects the harmonious structure of the cosmos. And to understand this, Pythagoras took a bolder step. He turned ethics into the mathematics of the soul. Virtue is harmony. Pythagorean. Saying, cited by Iamblichus, Life of Pythagoras. For Pythagoras, ethics is not merely a matter of will or feeling, but a matter of structure. Just as geometry defines the material world, ethics is the geometry of the inner life, where concepts such as justice, temperance, courage, wisdom, all have their own proportions and symmetries. When the soul attains this balance, it becomes beautiful, not only spiritually, but in the very rhythm of its existence. Ethics as the geometry of the soul. Pythagoras believed that all things are born from number, and the human soul is no exception. If the material world is built from proportion and symmetry, then the soul, the repository of actions and emotions, bears the same geometric language. Number is the ruler of forms and ideas, and the cause of gods and demons. Aristotle, Metaphysics I-5, quoting Pythagoras. Thus, ethics, which many take to be the realm of feeling or vague benevolence in Pythagoras' view, is elevated into a science of order. Right action is not the action that earns praise, but the action that is in proper proportion. A good deed is an act with a normative shape, neither lacking nor excessive, neither tilted nor skewed. Conversely, greed, anger, envy, all are errors in a mental calculation. An unbalanced soul is like a warped triangle, an equation missing a variable, or a melody out of time. To be virtuous is to be in proportion. To be vicious is to be out of measure. Pythagorean aphorism, cited by Sextus Empiricus II. Balance, proportion, and symmetry. The three laws of ethics. Pythagoras used the same three principles that govern mathematics: balance, proportion, and symmetry, to describe the foundations of ethics. 1. Balance the law of equilibrium. For him, justice is the perfect square where all sides are equal and no angle overwhelms another. Justice is a perfect square number. Pythagorean maxim, cited by Aristotle, Nicomachean. Ethics 5. Justice is not punishment, but the restoration of the right shape. A wrongful act is like a curve deviating from its axis of symmetry. Justice is the moral orthopedics that returns the soul to its balanced position. As in geometry, justice in ethics is not sentimental, it is precise. The sage does not hate the wicked. He simply sees in them a distorted figure that must be corrected by the light of reason. 2. Proportion. The law of measure. Temperance is among the highest virtues, and Pythagoras saw it as the principle of measure in mathematics. In music, an over-tightened string snaps. Too loose, it fails to sound. In ethics, a soul strained by ambition or slackened by apathy alike strays from the center of harmony. In all things, measure. Delphic maxim, later attributed to Pythagoras and inscribed at Delphi proportion, is the art of the mean living, neither too much nor too little, but just enough to harmonize. Every ethical decision, great or small, is an equation of proportion. How much to give, how much to receive, when to be silent, when to act. The wise person solves this equation not mechanically, but with harmonious intuition. 3. Symmetry, the law of harmony. If balance and proportion yield stability, symmetry bestows moral beauty. Pythagoras believed that every truly ethical act bears an aesthetic quality. A noble deed is not only right, it is beautiful because it reflects the perfection of the cosmos. Beauty is the perfect symmetry of the good. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Proclus symmetry, is also the bond between thought, word, action. When one thinks one thing, says another, and does a third, the soul fractures into pieces and loses order. But when these three mirror one another like twin panes of glass, the person becomes whole, and that wholeness is virtue. 3. The soul as living geometry. Pythagoras described the soul as a perpetually moving polygon, never fixed. Every action, every emotion, every ethical choice alters its shape. The soul is a number moving itself. Aristotle, De Anima Vipertu. An angry soul may shrink and warp like a broken trapezoid. A soul that loves and forgives expands like a circle, the symbol of perfection. Within each person, this geometry changes ceaselessly, and the task of life is to adjust that form until it becomes balanced, rounded, and in harmony with the universe. As in the Tetractys, the sacred emblem of 4 rows, 1 positum, 3 wove, 12 or 10, the soul must pass through 4 stages to reach completion. 1. Inner unity, the monad. 2. Recognition of opposites, the dyad. 3. Reconciliation of opposites, the triad. 4. Absolute justice, the tetrad. When the soul reaches the 4th row, the number 10, it attains the Tetractys, the state of perfect ethics, or, in other words, ethics as completed mathematics. A fool. Ethics and music, 2 rhythms of the same order. In Pythagorean thought, music is the emotional model of ethics. As sound has pitch and rhythm, ethical behavior has its frequency. A gentle soul emits a soft frequency. A proud soul resounds with a piercing one. There is music in the spacing of the spheres, attributed to Pythagoras, quoted by Johannes Kepler, Harmonicis Mundi. When people live out of time, they disorder the symphony, producing dissonance. Anger is an extraneous note. Greed, a skewed chord. Arrogance, an interval stretched too wide. The ethical person plays in time, neither too fast nor too slow, neither too loud nor too soft. And by living so, their life becomes a harmonious hymn to God. V. Justice as the square, the emblem of perfection. No figure symbolizes virtue more clearly than the square. For Pythagoras, the square stands for durability, symmetry, and precision. Each right angle represents a virtue: wisdom, courage, temperance, justice. When these four are equal, the perfect square is formed. This is inner justice. Justice is equality, not according to opinion, but according to proportion. Aristotle, Nicomachean. Ethics, chapter 5:3. Though Aristotle penned these words, they arise from the Pythagorean spirit. Justice is not rigid sameness, but right proportion. A father is not equal to a child, yet just conduct between them is the act proportioned to authority and responsibility. As in geometry, different sides can compose a balanced figure. So in ethics, virtue is the art of consonant relations. 6. When the soul falls out of time. Moral error and the art of self-correction. Pythagoras saw sin not as a verdict, but as an error. Greed, hatred, or lust do not make the soul evil, they distort its form. Our task is not self-punishment, but calibration. Error is disharmony, repentance is restoration of proportion. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Iamblichus. Through meditation, silence, discipline, and self-observation, one can redraw the soul's geometry like a painter, carefully correcting each line and angle until the canvas is true. Repentance is not a flood of tears, but the mathematical art of self-adjustment. 7. Ethics and science. When the beautiful, the good, and the true are one of Pythagoras' great legacies was to unify the beautiful, to Calon, the good, to Agathon, and the true, to Alethes, into a single equation. For him, these three cannot be separated. An act is truly good only when it is beautiful. It is beautiful only when it is true. And it is true only when it is harmonious. The good and the beautiful are one, for both are harmony. Pythagorean doctrine, cited by Proclus hence, his philosophy is at once ethics, aesthetics, and mathematics. The person who lives in proportion, in Pythagoras' eyes, is an artist of the soul, painting a life as a balanced picture in which every curve and shade takes its perfect place. 8. The mathematics of the soul, the parallel of cosmos and human being. Viewed cosmically, the planets orbit the central fire according to precise ratios. Viewed inwardly, our emotions, thoughts, and actions circle around the center of reason and ethics. When a planet strays from its orbit, it breeds chaos. When a person departs from their moral center, they spawn discord. As the stars obey number, so must the soul obey reason. Pythagorean, saying, by living in order, practicing restraint, loving rightly, restoring balance after error, one returns one's soul to its orbit, circling the light of truth. Ethics, therefore, ceases to be a religious command and becomes a natural law, the law by which the soul itself operates as a part of the cosmos. 9. Influence from Pythagoras to Plato and the modern world. The notion of the mathematics of ethics directly influenced Plato. In the Republic, he wrote, Virtue is a kind of health, beauty, and good condition of the soul. Vice is disease, deformity, and weakness. Plato, Republic of Art. 5. Plato inherited the full Pythagorean spirit. Ethics is the geometric health of the soul. Later, Plotinus, in the Enneads, wrote, "The soul becomes beautiful by the proportion of its acts." And in modern times, Pythagoras' balanced philosophy quietly persists in psychology, art, architecture, and even in moral science, where humanity seeks a formula for the good. Conclusion. The geometry of the heart. When night fell, over Croton, Pythagoras would often draw squares and triangles in the sand, then say to his students, "These are not drawings, but mirrors of the soul." For him, every line in geometry reflects a moral principle. Every equation is a metaphor of the soul. Justice is the square. Temperance is proportion. Virtue is symmetry. And the soul is God's living blueprint, ever needing adjustment by the human hand itself. The soul that has learned geometry shall never err in life. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Iamblichus. Once we grasp this, we see to live ethically is not to submit to imposed rules, but to live according to the natural geometry of one's own soul. A human life, in the end, is a journey to discover one's perfect shape, the shape of balance, of harmony, of justice. And perhaps, were Pythagoras here, he would smile and say, "To live rightly is to draw a perfect figure with the compass of the heart." Reincarnation and cosmic justice. The infinite equation of balance. From the previous chapters, we have seen Pythagoras view the world through the eyes of a mystical mathematician, where everything, from music to morality, operates according to proportion, order, and harmony. If human beings are part of the universe, then their souls must obey those same laws. At the height of this vision, Pythagoras conceived something magnificent. Justice is not imposed by the gods, but is the inevitable consequence of the mathematical order within the soul itself. This is the idea of reincarnation and cosmic justice, where every deviation in the soul is corrected through many lifetimes, not by punishment, but by the rebalancing of harmony. I, the soul in the cycle. Nothing perishes, but all transforms. Pythagoras believed that the soul is immortal, and that it moves unceasingly through countless forms to learn the way back to primordial order. The soul is immortal, and after death, it passes into other bodies. Aristotle, Metaphysics 1-3, recording Pythagoras' teaching. Each life is a movement in the music of the cosmos. When the soul falls out of time, it is not punished. It is simply carried into the next movement to retune the wayward note. Like a musician who practices until the piece is perfect, the soul undergoes countless retries, and suffering, error, or injustice are merely the resonance of notes not yet right. As long as men are ignorant of harmony, they must return to learn it again. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Iamblichus on the life of Pythagoras. For him, death is not an ending, but a semicolon in the story of the soul. Lives are not isolated. They follow one another like the lines of music in the symphony of justice. 2. The mathematical law of cause and effect. When the universe is an equation. Unlike religious beliefs in divine judgment, Pythagoras envisioned cosmic justice as a mathematical law. No one is rewarded or punished. There are only forces seeking to restore balance. Justice is a harmony of opposites. The universe corrects all imbalance. Pythagorean saying, preserved by Sextus Empiricus. In this view, every action creates a moral phase shift. A lie is a small error term in the soul's equation. A cruel deed is a curve bent away from its axis of symmetry. And the universe, with a geometer's precision, will recalibrate these shifts over time, not through punishment, but through corresponding experience. If we cause suffering, the soul will pass through suffering to understand the imbalance it created. If we sow goodness, the soul will reap harmony, not because God wills it, but because this is how the arithmetic of the soul corrects itself. Third, to suffer is to be tuned. Suffering as an instrument being set to pitch. One of Pythagoras' most moving ideas is that he did not see suffering as punishment. For him, suffering is the act of tuning. Suffering purifies the soul as fire refines gold. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Porphyry. Like a luthier tightening the string until the sound is true, the soul is stretched by difficult experiences to restore its original resonance. When we endure pain, we are being adjusted back to harmony. Hence Pythagoras taught his disciples to embrace adversity with gratitude as a necessary lesson. Nothing happens by chance. Every event is the arithmetic of cosmic justice. Do not complain of destiny. It is the geometry of your soul. Pythagorean aphorism, traditional. Seen through Pythagoras' mathematical eye, suffering is no longer tragedy, but a stage in the soul's retuning. 4. Cosmic justice. Order, not judgment. Pythagoras lived in an age when ancient religions believed in wrathful deities and sacrificial rites. He reversed that belief. The gods do not judge, they maintain order. The universe does not grow angry, it corrects. The law of the universe is justice, not vengeance. Pythagorean teaching, cited by Iamblichus. Pythagorean justice is a self-balancing mechanism. If a person introduces error by deed, word, or thought, the universe teaches the corresponding lesson. Not to retaliate, but to restore proportion. In such a world, every soul is a student, and every mistake is an exercise. No one is condemned forever, because every phase shift can be corrected so long as we listen for the rhythm of harmony. V. Each life a note in the symphony of time. Pythagoras regarded life not as a straight line, but as a multi-movement composition. Each incarnation is a note, and the soul, the immortal musician, plays the melody again and again until it is perfected. Life is a music made of many notes. The wise man learns to play them all. Pythagorean fragment, traditional. Those not yet complete must return to play again, yet each time they understand a little more, keep time a little better, and gradually move toward eternal harmony. Thus Pythagoras taught his students to treat each life as a chance to refine, not to chase pleasure, but to make the soul ring true. Every action, thought, and choice, however small, is a note in the soul's music. The wise person hears the entire piece, not only the present movement. 6. Reincarnation as the soul's infinite coursework. According to Pythagoras, the soul leaves the body at death, but does not vanish. It simply changes form, as number can pass from one expression to another while keeping its value constant. All things change, nothing perishes, the soul moves from form to form. Ovid, Metamorphoses, Pythagoras, 65166, interpreting Pythagorean thought. Each embodiment is a new expression of the same essence. If in one life the soul introduces error drifting from harmony, then in the next it will self-correct under contrary conditions until it reaches the true solution. As a mathematician seeks solutions to an equation, the soul solves its own equation through hundreds or thousands of trials. Only when it finds the right solution, when it lives wholly in the order of the beautiful, the good, and the true, does it attain absolute completion, no longer needing to be reborn. 7. Nothing is lost. The justice of continuity. For Pythagoras, no good is ever lost, and no evil is without effect. The universe remembers every vibration, and every vibration is answered. This is not punishment, but the conservation principle of ethics. No act of virtue is ever wasted. No discord remains uncorrected. Pythagorean teaching, cited by Diogenes Laertius. This makes Pythagorean philosophy a religion of hope. No soul is abandoned, no fault is beyond repair. Even in suffering, in failure, in loss, we are moving closer to the scale of harmony. 8. Cosmic justice and human ethics. Pythagoras taught that understanding cosmic justice changes the way we live. When we know that every action returns in exact proportion, fear and greed fall away. When we understand that suffering is tuning, resentment dissolves. And when we know that the soul does not die, despair loses its grip. He who understands the harmony of the world no longer blames it. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Iamblichus. Those who live in the Pythagorean spirit do not flee suffering. They listen within it, seeking the misaligned rhythm that needs correction. Each day they ask, have I lived in right proportion? That very question is the silent prayer of the mathematical soul. 9. The union of cause, effect, and harmony. Pythagoras' thought differs from a purely moralistic karma in that cause and effect are not reward-punishment, but addition-subtraction. Retribution is not penalty, but rebalancing of proportion. Happiness is not a prize, but the stable state of the soul's equation. Justice restores measure to the unbalanced, harmony to the discordant. Pythagorean doctrine, recorded by Proclus. Therefore, to live well is to live precisely, not merely to live nicely. The virtuous do not pray to be spared, they pray to live in time. And when every soul keeps time, the universe attains cosmic justice, where all sounds merge into the eternal music. Conclusion. The universe as a music of atonement. If the universe is an orchestra, then each soul is a musician. There are missed notes and stray tones, yet the whole still strives toward final consonance. No one is excluded from this music. All are rehearsing to play it right. The soul returns until the harmony is perfect. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Porphyry. Perhaps this is the loveliest definition of justice, a composition in which every wrong note is ultimately reconciled. There is no hell, no vengeance, only a universe patiently resetting the strings of the soul. This life is but one movement, yet each movement brings us nearer to the complete work. Life is not one song, but a symphony of lives, and the law of the universe is simple. Every note shall find its harmony, silence and listening. The sacred discipline of hearing, the cosmos. From the previous chapter, we passed through the deepest layers of Pythagoras' worldview. The universe as a symphony, the soul as an instrument seeking to come into time, and justice as the rebalancing of errant notes. But to hear that music, the invisible music of the heavenly spheres, of morality, of sacred order, human beings need a faculty higher than knowledge, the faculty of silence. For Pythagoras, silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of listening. It is the doorway through which the soul communes with the cosmos, the place where the noise of the world dissolves to make way for the music of truth. Be silent, or let thy words be worth more than silence. The golden verses of Pythagoras were: silence, the sacred right of the seeker. Upon entering the school at Croton, Pythagoras's first-year students were not permitted to speak for many years. Some kept silence for 3 years, others for 5, and only when the master perceived they could truly hear with the soul were they allowed to speak. He imposed silence upon his disciples to teach them that the ear is the first teacher of wisdom. Iamblichus on the life of Pythagoras. For Pythagoras, speech is a double-edged blade. It can transmit knowledge, but it can also shatter harmony if uttered before wisdom has ripened. Those who speak much without having listened enough are like musicians striking the wrong beat. They do not create order. They add to the disorder. Therefore, silence is not merely a moral discipline, but the initiatory rite of wisdom. Before speaking, the student must learn to listen not to others, but to the voice of order within themselves. 2. Hearing with the soul, not with the ears. Pythagoras believed that every human carries an inner melody, the soul's vibration, mirroring the rhythm of the universe. Yet over time, the noise of desire, fear, and ambition jams that melody. Only through silence, the absolute stillness of mind, can one hear again the primordial sound of harmony. The soul hears the music of the spheres when the noise of the body is stilled. Pythagorean teaching, cited by Iamblichus. In Pythagorean philosophy, hearing is not a physiological act, but a state of the soul. The ear hears sounds, the mind hears words, but the soul hears order. When we truly listen, we move beyond language, for words, however subtle, are only the shadow of truth. In Pythagoras' cosmos, truth is rhythm, not concept, and to hear that rhythm, the soul must become still as a mirror of water. 3. Silence as a method of purification. For Pythagoras, silence is a form of purification no less important than vegetarianism or meditation. If the body is clouded by heavy foods, the soul is clouded by excess words. Do not speak idly, for each word disturbs the harmony of your inner music. Pythagorean fragment, traditional. He taught that dishonest, bitter, or frivolous speech are offbeat vibrations that drive the soul away from the universe's frequency. Conversely, silence purifies the frequency, bringing us back to the center of harmony. The disciple keeps silence not out of fear of error, but out of the desire to hear the order at work within. Silence lets them hear fear, pride, greed, the false notes in the mind's score. Hearing them, they can retune. This is purification, the tuning of the soul through inner listening. Wove, the voice of the cosmos, a speech beyond words. Pythagoras taught that the universe is always speaking. It is only that human ears are too noisy to hear. The sound of wind, of rivers, of planetary motion are the language of order. Yet human beings, engrossed in their own speech, have forgotten how to listen to silence singing. Listen to the silence, and you will hear the voice of God. Pythagorean saying, preserved by Porphyry. This statement lies at the heart of Pythagoras' entire philosophy of hearing. For him, God does not speak in words, but in proportion. We need not seek him in scriptures so much as be silent long enough to hear him in our own heartbeat. Thus, silence is the language of the universe, and listening is the art of reading the sacred score. V. The teacher's silence and the voice of knowledge. Pythagoras often taught from behind a veil, so that students would hear his voice but not see his face. His aim was not to cultivate mystery, but to force students to listen to content rather than to image. He taught from behind a veil that the soul might hear without the eyes. Diogenes Laertius. Lives of eminent philosophers. In an age when knowledge is often tied to performance, Pythagoras taught that truth needs neither face nor fanfare. It needs the quiet within the listener. Silence, in this sense, is the chamber in which truth resounds. Just as a room echoes most clearly when it is empty, the soul hears truth when it is no longer filled with its own voice. 6. Speech and rhythm. When words become music, Pythagoras did not deny the value of speech. He merely required it to be in tune. After years of silence, his students were permitted to speak, but they were to speak like singers in the cosmic orchestra, each word a precise note bearing the timbre of truth. Speak little, but speak harmony. Pythagorean maxim. Speech then ceases to be a display of wit and becomes an ethical act. Every true sentence is an addition to order. Every false word, a subtraction. One who has attained inner silence knows how to say little yet resound far, because their words vibrate with the frequency of truth. Such language becomes the music of the soul, not the noise of the ego. 7. Silence the bridge between human and divine. In the Croton meditative rites, after prayer, all disciples would sit in 10 minutes of absolute silence. No one looked at anyone else. No one moved. They simply listened to life breathing within them, to the universe ringing around them. In silence, the divine order descends into the soul. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Iamblichus. This is the moment when the boundary between person and universe dissolves. When the soul is free of the self's chatter, it beats in time with the cosmos. Silence becomes a rite of meeting, God not through petition, but through pure resonance. Fate. Why are humans afraid of silence? Pythagoras once said that the fear of silence is the fear of facing oneself. When speech stops, one is forced to hear the inner sounds, unrest, cravings, unresolved desires. Only by passing through this stage does the soul truly grow still. He who cannot bear silence cannot hear truth. Pythagorean aphorism, traditional. Modern people, amid the clamor of the world, have lost the ability to hear themselves. If Pythagoras lived today, he might say, "You do not need more sound, you need an interval of rest. Only in silence does what is truly worth saying take shape." 9. Silence in action, living like music, not like noise. A beautiful paradox in Pythagorean philosophy is this. He taught silence, yet his life resounded more powerfully than any speech. He believed that right action is the language of truth. Those who know how to listen do not talk about virtue, they live it. The wise man speaks through his deeds. Pythagorean saying, preserved by Diogenes Laertius. True silence is therefore not merely holding one's tongue, but letting action speak. A silent person filled with goodwill turns every deed into an echo of cosmic justice. That is why Pythagoras was revered as the one who heard the voices of the stars not, because he had divine ears, but because his soul harbored no noise in between. X. Listening to truth, the highest art of life. In Pythagorean philosophy, the summit of wisdom is not to speak correctly, but to listen deeply. Listening is not mere intake of information. It is immersion in the vibration of truth. Wisdom begins in wonder and grows in silence. Attributed to Pythagoras, echoed later by Plato. Listening is the art of humility, for only those who can be still can receive what is greater than themselves. The true listener does not hunt for answers. They open themselves so that truth may resound on its own. When that happens, there is no boundary between the listener and what is heard. The two become a single oscillation within cosmic order. Shibudais. Conclusion: silence, the music of the soul. At Croton's sunset, it is said that Pythagoras often sat on the shore with eyes closed, saying nothing. His students stood at a distance, quietly watching. There were only the sounds of waves, of wind, and the master's breathing, all merging as one. In that moment, the universe seemed to fall silent to listen to itself. Silence is the music of the soul, in tune with the stars. Pythagorean fragment. Traditional. Pythagoras' silence is not an escape from the world, but its deepest communion. When speech ceases and the mind stops calculating, we hear what language can never touch: the heartbeat of eternity. And perhaps this is why his final disciples, when asked what the greatest lesson was, answered with a single line: "He taught us not how to speak of truth, but how to hear it." Music as healing. The harmonies that restore the soul. From the previous chapter, we listened to Pythagoras speak of silence, not as emptiness, but as a doorway opening onto the voice of the universe. Yet once a person has learned how to listen, what will resound within that quiet? Pythagoras' answer is music. For him, music is not merely an art, but a therapy for the soul, the medical language of the cosmos. There is geometry in the humming of the strings. There is music in the spacing of the spheres. Attributed to Pythagoras, quoted by Johannes Kepler, Harmonices Mundi, 1619. In his thought, sound is the physical current of cosmic frequency, while music is how the universe speaks of balance. And when human beings listen, they do not merely take pleasure, they are healed. Music, the form of living order. Pythagoras believed the universe is a vast symphony, where every planet, every atom, every living being vibrates at a certain frequency. Things exist because they vibrate in time. Number is the cause of all things. Harmony is the union of opposites. Aristotle, Metaphysics, Starbreak 5, reporting the doctrine of Pythagoras music, to him, is not a human invention. It is a reflection of cosmic order. When we play a melody, we are imitating the way the planets revolve around the central fire. Every note, every interval, every chordiac is a mathematical formula of life. Pythagoras once said that one who does not know music cannot know philosophy, for music teaches us to understand the proportions of the universe, the way tension and slack, light and dark, joy and sorrow blend to create beauty. Music is the medicine of the soul. Pythagoras, cited by Cicero, Tusculan. Disputations 422. Morning and evening, the two healing pulses of the day. In the school at Croton, Pythagoras prescribed that music be heard twice a day, morning and evening, as a spiritual dosage. In the morning, students listened to bright melodies, brisk tempos, harmonies built on the fifth, and the octavato awaken the soul from sleep, stirring energy and resolve. In the evening, they listen to slower pieces, chiefly in the third or the fourth, to dispel anger, reduce desire, and return the mind to stillness. He used music as medicine, certain melodies to calm anger, others to awaken courage. Iamblichus on the Pythagorean life. 110. Pythagoras did not merely teach people to listen to music, but to use music as a way to cleanse the soul. For him, a morning without music is a soul left untuned, and an evening without melody is a mind unwashed. Third, sound and frequency, the soul's vibration. In Pythagoras' system, the soul is like a lyre string. Each person carries a unique frequency, reflecting their degree of harmony with the universe. When the soul falls out of time through fear, anger, or lust, it emits out-of-phase oscillations. Music, by virtue of its precise mathematical structure, resets this frequency. The soul is tuned by sound, as an instrument by the hand of the musician. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Porphyry on Abstinence the Second. 39. In that process, Pythagoras did not regard music as magic, but as the science of resonance. Each note is a vibration of true frequency, and when it touches a soul that is out of tune, it creates interference that draws the soul back toward its original equilibrium. When the listener reaches that state, they do not merely hear music, they become part of the music. It is the moment when the boundary between person and cosmos dissolves, when we cease to be spectators and become a string in the hands of God. 4. To heal is to harmonize healing as a return to harmony. Pythagoras held that every illness of body or of mind arises from disharmony in vibration. Body and soul are not separate. When the soul is off frequency, the body shows it through pain, insomnia, fear, or disease. Disease of the soul is disharmony. Health is harmony. Pythagorean doctrine cited by Galen on the natural faculties. Ancient accounts say he healed many by singing or playing the lyre at particular frequencies. These sounds were not for entertainment, but sonic prescriptions. When sound enters, it synchronizes the body's energy channels. Heart rate and breath grow regular. The mind opens and grows light. He cured the passions of the soul by certain melodies, as if by magic. Iamblichus on the Pythagorean life. 113. For him, healing does not expel the bad, it restores order. Music does this by bringing the soul back to its rightful vibration, the rhythm it forgot amid life's chaos. V. Light and shadow in music. Pythagorean music is not only beautiful or soothing, but a chart of human feeling. He divided melodies into two poles, light and shadow. Light music, with higher ranges and quick tempo, awakens. Shadow music, with lower registers and slower rhythms, releases. The two are not opposed, but complementary, like day and night, inhalation and exhalation. Live only in bright music, and the soul will burn out. Dwell only in dark music, and it will sink. True healing is knowing when to resound and when to be still. Harmony arises from the tension between opposites. Pythagorean saying, cited by Aristotle, Metaphysics, Itchoi 5. Thus in Croton, each day included two phases of musical therapy. Morning, the music of light to rouse vitality. Evening, the music of shadow to return the soul to stillness, Together they form the musical circle of life, where every vibration finds its counterweight. 6. Music and the soul's memory. According to Pythagoras, music not only heals the present body, it awakens the soul's ancient memory. Across the chain of reincarnations, every soul has heard the cosmic music 1,000 times, but upon being born, it forgets that melody. Music for him is the key that unlocks that sacred remembrance. The soul, on hearing music, remembers the harmony from which it came. Pythagorean fragment cited by Porphyry, Life of Pythagoras. This is why people in any culture are moved by music. No one must teach us rhythm because we are born of rhythm. Whenever we hear a melody that brings us to tears, it may be the dim memory of a soul recognizing itself. 7th, music, morality, and spirit. 3 currents of one stream. For Pythagoras, music does not merely soothe feeling, it shapes ethics. A soul that listens rightly will live rightly. Conversely, to overindulge in chaotic sound noise, pounding rhythms, vulgar lyrics, warps the phase of the soul, dulls its sense of beauty, and estranges it from sacred order. Let your music teach virtue, not passion. Pythagorean saying, preserved by Stobaeus. Good music does not merely make us feel good, it makes us want to be good. It does not flatter our emotions, it leads them back to the center of reason. Once the soul is harmonized, outward action naturally grows harmonious, as if ethics, aesthetics, and acoustics were one and the same composition. 8. Music as the bridge between human and divine. Pythagoras believed that in every form of prayer, music is the language the gods most clearly understand. No word or offering can move God more than a melody released by a purified soul. To sing rightly is to pray twice. Pythagorean aphorism, later echoed by St. Augustine: when we sing, we do not merely express feeling, we create a frequency bridge between the soul and the universe. Melody is a current of sonic light, carrying consciousness beyond material borders. Thus, Pythagoras saw music as the highest way to commune with the sacred, not through argument, but through resonance. 9. Music as medicine. Sound as a sacred medicine. One of the most practical aspects of Pythagorean philosophy is applying music to heal the body. Ancient texts record that he and his students used lyre, flute, and chant, with specific scales to regulate a patient's body. He applied music to the sick, thinking that melody and rhythm possess great power over the body and the soul. Iamblichus on the Pythagorean life. 114. Slow drum pulses were used to ease a racing heart. Sustained octave passages helped reduce spasms and pain. Warm timbres in the minor third lulled the sleepless into gentle dreams. Pythagoras did not divide medicine and spirit for him. To heal is to restore harmony, and music is the tool of Apollo, the god of light, art, and healing. X. The universe sings the music of the spheres. All of Pythagoras's musical doctrine springs from the conviction that the universe is singing. The planets, in their motion, emit sound not audible to the ear, but perceptible to the soul. He called it the music of the spheres. The whole universe is a harmony, and the motion of the planets is a divine song. Pythagorean doctrine, cited by Cicero, De Republica 6. When the human soul grows clear and synchronized, it can hear that music not with the ear, but with stillness. This is why Pythagoras said that the true listener to music is not the one with keen ears, but the one with a pure heart. Exith. Conclusion. When sound returns to light. For Pythagoras, music does not end as sound. It returns as light. When the soul is healed, its vibrations grow so pure that sound transforms into inner radiance. And that is the state of salvation. When harmony reigns within, the soul shines. Pythagorean saying. Thus music is not merely a means, it is the path back to the source. We begin amid the world's clamor, pass through the silence of practice, and at last hear the music that is our own. In that music, pain becomes harmony, tears become light, and the human being finds the wholeness once lost. He who hears the harmony of the world is healed, for he has become part of its song. Virtue and harmony in action. The geometry of the living soul. After the chapters on music and the healing of the soul, Pythagoras' philosophical journey arrives at the point where all knowledge crystallizes, to live in virtue. If music is the harmony of sound, then ethics is the harmony of action. For Pythagoras, virtue is not a creed to be believed, but a frequency to be lived with. He taught that the wise live in right proportion, where reason, emotion, and action vibrate in phase, like three strings resonating together in a perfect chord. Virtue is harmony, vice is discord. Pythagorean saying, cited by Iamblichus on the Pythagorean life. Virtue, the soul's music, made manifest in action. In Pythagorean thought, every virtue, justice, temperance, courage, and compassion is a moral proportion, like intervals in music. One who lives justly plays the square, exact note of geometry. One who is temperate knows how to keep the string at proper tension. One who is courageous strikes the high note when it is time, and one who is compassionate harmonizes with all. As the lyre must not be too tight nor too slack, so must the soul be tuned to moderation. Aristotle, Nicomachean. Ethics, the Seker 6. Drawing on Pythagorean doctrine, ethics, therefore, is not the obedience to rules, but the art of fine-tuning the inner frequency. When a person falls out of time, too greedy, too angry, or too indifferent, the music within goes off pitch. And like a musician, the soul must practice again to recover the rhythm, not through punishment, but through awareness and the effort to reharmonize. Life is like a lyre. When we err, we do not break it, but we must retune it. Pythagorean fragment, traditional Lusiku. The unity of reason, emotion, and action. Pythagoras saw the human being as a moral triangle whose three sides are reason, emotion, and action. When these three sides hold a harmonious proportion, the soul attains integrity. Reason sets the tempo, emotion gives timbre, action projects the sound into the world. He who thinks rightly, feels rightly, and acts rightly makes of his life a harmony. Pythagorean teaching, cited by Iamblichus. In this view, virtue is not located in theory, but in the concrete cadence of living. One may understand justice, but if one does not act justly, one is merely a theorist out of time. Only when thought and deed unite does ethics ring like true music. Pythagoras likened this to learning an instrument. Reason is knowledge of musical law. Emotion is the energy that gives the sound. Action is the hand upon the string. When these three become one, the person no longer plays virtue, they become the music of virtue. 3. Justice, the perfect square. In Pythagoras' arithmetic doctrine, Each number bears a symbolic moral meaning. The number 4 signifies justice, because it forms the square, the emblem of balance and perfect symmetry. Justice is a perfect square, equal sides, equal angles, equal measure. Aristotle, Metaphysics R.5, transmitting Pythagorean teaching. For him, justice is not a sentence pronounced, but a geometric state of the soul. The just person keeps all sides equal, knowing how to give and receive, to love and to discipline, to balance rights and duties in due proportion. Injustice, by contrast, is a deformed figure, where the sides no longer hold their ratios. Thus Pythagoras taught that when we act wrongly, we do not commit a crime, we distort the figure. Justice comes not from punishment, but from restoring proportion. To be just is to be in proportion. Pythagorean fragment 4. Temperance, the art of keeping the string at true tension. Pythagoras called temperance the mother of all virtues, for without temperance, all else becomes extreme. He said, "Too much light blinds the eye, too much sound deafens the ear, nothing in excess." Miden agan, Delphic maxim, transmitted by Pythagoras. In his philosophy, temperance is not repression, but the equilibrium of forces. As music needs both low and high, life needs both joy and sorrow, rest and labor. The wise are those who know when to stop, not from fear, but from understanding the golden point of harmony. He who knows measure, knows peace. Pythagorean, saying temperance protects the soul from extreme oscillations, keeping life's rhythm steady, neither sluggish nor hasty like the breathing of the cosmos. V. Courage, right action amid imbalance. Pythagoras did not view courage as recklessness, but as steadfast timing within chaos. The courageous person is not one who knows no fear, but one who knows fear and still acts in time. Courage is harmony between fear and reason. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Diogenes Laertius. Amid war, oppression, or injustice, the one who keeps reason from being overrun by emotion is the one who holds the world's tempo. Thus Pythagoras taught that courage is not to defeat others, but to recalibrate oneself when all around is out of phase. Courage is the spirit of the cosmos's conductor, keeping time while other strings tremble. 6. Compassion, the resonance of all souls. The summit of virtue, for Pythagoras, is compassion, the state in which our soul feels the sound of another soul. Then we no longer see others, only another melody within the same cosmic score. As the strings of the lyre vibrate together, so do all souls that are in tune. Pythagorean teaching, cited by Porphyry, Life of Pythagoras. Compassion is not pity, but harmony. The compassionate do not help to feel superior. They help to keep the common music from going off key. This is why Pythagoras forbade the killing of animals. He held that all living beings vibrate to the same cosmic rhythm. To harm a living being is to detune the entire symphony. He who kills one life untunes the music of the world. Pythagorean fragment, traditional. Compassion, therefore, is the highest expression of knowledge, for only one who deeply understands the interconnection of all things can truly resonate with them. 7th, life is practice. Error is not sin, but off time. In his teachings, Pythagoras often used the metaphor of learning the lyre. A beginner is not blamed for striking a wrong note, for error is part of learning. What matters is hearing the wrong note. The error is not sin, but disharmony. To correct it is wisdom. Pythagorean saying, cited by Iamblichus. So it is with life. Every mistake, every anger or weakness is simply a stray note in the soul's music. If we can listen, we can correct, practice again, and go on playing. Pythagoras taught that the wise do not fear error, for error is the chance to fine-tune. No soul remains perfect forever. There is only the soul that knows how to listen and adjust. That is true ethics, neither fixed nor proud, but living like a piece forever being perfected. Faith. Virtue as collective resonance. Pythagoras regarded the community at Croton as an orchestra. Each member is an instrument, and society becomes good only when all play the same score, the score of justice, temperance, and concord. The city is well governed when its citizens are in harmony. Pythagorean doctrine, cited by Aristotle. Politics the sec. If one person lives in disorder, they throw the ensemble out of time. Conversely, a single harmonized individual radiates harmony, helping the community recalibrate. This was Pythagoras' political philosophy. Personal virtue is cosmic politics in miniature. Thus, to live ethically is not only for oneself, but an act that contributes to the music of humankind. Nigh. When action becomes prayer, Pythagoras said that prayer is not made with words, but with right action. When we live justly, speak with temperance, and act with compassion, then we pray in frequency. The just act is the prayer of the wise. Pythagorean fragment, traditional. Every action, if performed with awareness and harmony, is a sacred note. Prayer, in this sense, is not directed outward, but inward, where the universe's order is mirrored in the human heart. Those who live in virtue do not seek God elsewhere, for they live in Him, within the very rhythm of the universe. Conclusion. When virtue becomes the universe's music, when Pythagoras looked at life, he did not see sins to be punished. He saw strings to be retuned. He believed that if each person tuned their own rhythm, humanity would unite in a music of justice and love. He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe. Pythagoras, cited by Iamblichus, on the Pythagorean life. And this is the final definition of virtue. Not belief, not submission, but right proportion. To live so that every act, every word, every thought sounds as a note within the orchestra of the cosmos. Life, as Pythagoras said, is not a courtroom, but a concert hall. A wrong note does not condemn us, it merely reminds us to keep practicing. And when we learn to listen, adjust, and play again with all our heart, we add our part to the sacred symphony of the cosmos, where virtue is music and the soul is the singer. To live virtuously is to be in tune. To love is to let the universe play through you. Liberation through proportion. The final harmony of the soul. After the long journey through the previous chapters, where Pythagoras led us from the music of the universe to ethics as geometry to virtue in action, we now arrive at the culmination of his philosophy, liberation through proportion. If the whole of life is a piece of music, then liberation is the moment when the soul is no longer the player, but becomes the melody itself. At that level, a person no longer needs to learn, to correct, or to be reborn. They have dissolved into the sacred order, what Pythagoras calls the divine frequency, the frequency of God. When the soul is in perfect proportion, it ceases to wander and becomes one with the harmony of the spheres. Pythagorean fragment, cited by Iamblichus on the Pythagorean life. 1. The journey from chaos to harmony. Throughout Pythagoras' philosophy, existence is described as a journey of tuning frequency. The soul begins in chaos where notes collide, vibrations mingle among desire, fear, and ignorance. Through many lives, through discipline, music, ethics, and right action, the soul gradually learns the rhythm of the cosmos. All things seek proportion, for proportion is peace. Pythagorean saying, cited by Aristotle, Metaphysics Y.5. Each life is another sound check, each mistake a slack string to be tuned, and each virtue a recovered chord. When every inner ratio is balanced, when mind, emotion, and action vibrate at the same frequency as the universe, the soul touches supreme harmony. Liberation, therefore, does not come from fleeing the world or from prayer, but from the absolute exactness of inward proportion. 2. Divine frequency. When the soul resonates with the universe, Pythagoras did not speak of heaven or blessed realms in the religious sense, but of a state of pure vibration. There, the soul no longer struggles or swings between opposites, it rings true with the universe. The highest good is harmony with the divine order. Pythagorean teaching, cited by Cicero, De Republica 6. He believed that each soul is a small oscillation within the ocean of the universe's sound. When its frequency is off, the soul falls, it must return in rebirth to learn balance again. But when its frequency coincides, it dissolves into the divine frequency, no longer divided. This state is theosis deification, not by power, but by harmony. One does not become God, but vibrates in unison with Him. The soul purified becomes a number in the body of God. Pythagorean fragment, traditional the third. Liberation is not escape from life, but right proportion within it. Pythagoras taught that liberation is not leaving the world, but living within it while keeping harmony. The world is not a prison, but a sound school where the soul learns to strike the true note. Do not seek escape, but right proportion in all things. Pythagorean aphorism. The liberated person is not the one who abandons everything, but the one who is not shaken by anything. When they love in balance. When they act in season. When they speak, their words ring like a reference pitch amidst chaos. Pythagoras likened life to the cosmos' lyre. The unawakened pluck the wrong notes and break the strings. The wise know when to tighten and when to slacken, and the music they make becomes a bridge between heaven and earth. Ephu, balance the formula of freedom. According to Pythagoras, every human bondage, fear, greed, lust, anger, is a phase error. Freedom does not come by cutting these away, but by bringing them into right proportion. Freedom is the balance of forces, not their absence. Pythagorean teaching. If reason dominates emotion, the soul grows arid. If emotion overwhelms reason, the soul sinks into chaos. Only when these two fuse like two notes forming the perfect fifth, 3-2, does one become truly free. Such freedom is not exemption from law, but living within law without being governed by it. As Pythagoras said, he is free who lives according to measure. Pythagorean fragment, traditional, phi, right action. Each new note in the eternal music. When the soul has attained balance, every action becomes a note in the sacred music. There is no longer right and wrong, only exact and inexact. Each timely gesture, each lucid thought, each kind word is a true note sounding in the cosmos. Every act in harmony is a note added to the music of eternity. Pythagorean, saying liberation is not the cessation of action, but action that generates no dissonance. Those who attain this state leave no karmic trace, for all their vibrations coincide with the rhythm of the whole. Justice, compassion, wisdom, and music unite in right action without after echo. This is the art of living like the universe, doing without forcing, sounding without drifting. 6. When a person becomes the music, Pythagoras believed that at the moment the soul reaches divine frequency, a person is no longer a separate entity, but becomes a part of the universe's music. There is no me and the universe, only a single, all-encompassing oscillation. The wise man does not see the stars. He feels himself moving with them. Pythagorean fragment cited by Porphyry. This is what the East calls moksha, or nirvana, which Pythagoras describes in mathematical language. When all ratios reach perfection, the system becomes invariant. The soul then neither lives nor dies, for it has reached an eternally stable equation. When proportion is perfect, change ceases. Pythagorean doctrine, cited by Proclus. Such union is not annihilation, but becoming a note within God's endless symphony. Like a drop entering the sea, it is not lost. It joins a greater rhythm. 7. The silence of the perfected. One of Pythagoras' final emblems is the silence of the perfected. Not because they have nothing to say, but because every word has already sounded in the music of their actions. The perfected soul is silent, for it has become the sound itself. Pythagorean, saying preserved by Iamblichus. Such a person does not teach by speech, but by presence. Their step is light, their breath is gentle, and wherever they go, things quietly recalibrate. They do not coerce or exhort, for their frequency is itself a doctrine. Wait. From mathematics to theology, mathematics as a mirror of the soul, Pythagoras viewed the world through the language of number and form. But behind those formulas, he sought not mere knowledge, but the soul's reflection. Mathematics is the mirror of the soul, reflecting its order or confusion. Pythagorean fragment, traditional. For him, number is not a sign, but an expression of moral and spiritual reality. A chaotic mind is a failed equation. A lucid soul is a balanced graph, where all axes intersect at the center, the meeting point of man and God. When we study mathematics, we study ourselves. When we draw a circle, we sketch the soul. And when we attain proportion, we behold God in the golden ratio of our own interior. God geometrizes continually. Plato, Timaeus 47b, echoing the Pythagorean spirit 9. Beauty as a path to liberation. In Pythagorean teaching, beauty is not preference, but the manifestation of sacred order. Thus, the lover of beauty in music, art, or actionists, already drawing near to liberation. Beauty is the splendor of order, Pythagorean maxim. When the soul reaches this state, it no longer strives to be virtuous, for virtue has become natural. It need not speak of peace, for it is peace. It need not discourse on God, for it embodies His order. X. Death as the final harmony. For Pythagoras, death is not an end, but the final chord of the earthly piece. If the soul has found the true tempo, death is no longer fearsome. It is the moment of consonance with the whole. Death is but the final chord, resolving all dissonance. Pythagorean fragment, traditional. Those still unbalanced fear death because they remain out of phase, their music unfinished. Those who are in tune smile when the string breaks, knowing its sound continues in the universe's music. Psychois, the rebirth of light. The circle closes. When the soul attains absolute proportion, it is no longer reborn, for there is no imbalance left to mend. It has completed the circle, the figure Pythagoras held most sacred. The circle is the symbol of perfection, for it has no beginning and no end. Pythagorean doctrine. At that point, the person becomes pure light, reflecting eternal order. There is no more effort, no more learning, no more questioning, only being as the heartbeat of the universe. Pythagoras called this liberation through proportions, alvation, not by belief, but by the exactness of existence. For receive, conclusion. When the soul beholds itself in the mathematical mirror. When Pythagoras concluded his philosophical journey, he left not a command, but an image. Mathematics as the mirror of the soul. In that mirror, we behold ourselves, distorted when we live out of proportion, radiant when we reach balance. To know number is to know the soul. To see proportion is to see God. Pythagorean fragment, traditional. Liberation, then, is not escape from the world, but living in the universe's rhythm. Each right action is a luminous note, each balanced choice a sacred geometry. When the whole of our life resounds in true time, neither fast nor slow, neither high nor low, we are no longer the singer. We become the song. And in that moment, the soul, after countless lives, learning music, learning virtue, learning how to live, returns to its sacred essence, a perfect equation, a completed circle, an immortal melody. Mathematics is the mirror of the soul, and when the reflection is pure, the soul becomes infinite. The legacy and influence of Pythagoras. When numbers became light. After journeying through the profound depths of Pythagorean philosophy, from the music of the cosmos to the geometry of ethics, to liberation through balance, this exploration ends with a larger question. What remained after him? The answer is everywhere in Plato's philosophy, in Kepler's planetary orbits, in Newton's laws of motion, and even in modern string theory, where the universe is described as a symphony of vibrations. Geometry is knowledge of the eternally existent. Plato, Republic 7, directly reflecting Pythagorean thought. Pythagoras was the first to see the world not merely with the eye, but with rhythm. He transformed mathematics into a religion of order, where every number was the soul of the cosmos. From him, humanity learned a new vision. The universe is not chaos, but a song measurable by intellect and felt through the soul. From Plato to Kepler, when philosophy became cosmology, Plato was deeply influenced by the Pythagorean school. In Timaeus, he portrayed God as the great geometer, and the world's soul as being composed of mathematical proportion. God geometrizes continually. Plato, Timaeus 47b. This idea passed straight into the heart of Johannes Kepler, who believed that the planets move around the sun not by chance, but according to sacred musical intervals. In his Harmonices Mundi, 1619, Kepler wrote, "The harmony of the world is made manifest in form and number, and the soul of man is its echo." Thus, from Pythagoras to Kepler, music became cosmology. Humanity no longer merely observed the stars, it began to listen to them and discovered that the heavens move like a symphony of number and harmony. 2. Newton and the physics of harmony. Isaac Newton, the father of classical physics, was a man who never separated science from the sacred. He once said he was reading the poetry of God written in the language of mathematics. The book of nature is written in the language of mathematics. Isaac Newton, Principia Mathematica, 1687. This is the continuation of the Pythagorean spirit. Mathematics is not merely a tool for calculation, but the language of the universe. Every physical law, from gravity to the spectrum of light, is but the musical law of matter. Newton, Kepler, and later Einstein all walked the path Pythagoras had first traced, seeking truth through proportion and harmony. 3. From theorem to philosophy, when numbers became soul. The world remembers Pythagoras for his famous triangle theorem, yet to those who look deeper, that theorem was only the doorway. It did not simply declare that A2 plus B2 or C2, but hinted that every form, every motion, every deed follows a deeper order, the order of harmony. The universe is built upon the power of number. Pythagorean teaching cited by Aristotle, Metaphysics I.5. His true legacy does not lie in numbers themselves, but in seeing through them. Every person, every soul, every decision is a variation of the same sacred equation. And when one lives in right proportion, one no longer stands apart from the universe, but becomes a living note within its eternal song. 4. From quantum physics to the philosophy of sound. Today, when modern physics speaks of string theory, the hypothesis that all fundamental particles are vibrating strings at different frequencies, we hear the echo of Pythagoras resounding after 2,500 years. All matter is vibration. Modern physics echo of the Pythagorean principle. From electrons to light, from atoms to galaxies, everything vibrates like music. Modern science, though it rarely names him, still speaks the language of Pythagoras, the language of harmony, ratio, and rhythm. The only difference is that where once there was the lyre, there is now the particle accelerator. But the essence remains: the universe is music, and humanity is the listener. V. The living legacy when reason and soul sing together. What remains after Pythagoras is not a sect, but a way of life. To live like a mathematician, using reason to understand the world's order. To live like a sage, using the soul to feel the beauty of that order. He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe. Pythagoras, cited by Iamblichus. That legacy endures in every heartbeat of humankind, in music, in art, in science, in ethics, in the breath of all who seek truth. Pythagoras did not teach us merely to count, but to listen. Not merely to calculate, but to understand that each number, each shape, each rhythm of life is the whisper of the universe. And when we live in harmony, we continue the song he began, where reason and soul sing the same melody, and mathematics stands revealed as the mirror of eternity. Mathematics is not a science of numbers, but the poetry of being. When mathematics became metaphysics, the song of the infinite, from the legacy Pythagoras left behind, where music, ethics, and geometry blended into one, this journey closes with a profound reflection. In his hands, mathematics transcended the realm of man to become the language of the divine. Number is the ruler of forms and ideas, and the cause of gods and demons. Aristotle, Metaphysics 4.5, quoting the teachings of Pythagoras. For him, number was not a mere symbol, but the breath of cosmic order. When human beings learn to understand numbers, they are not merely calculating or measuring, they are in communion with the sacred within themselves. Every number is a living idea, a vibration between the visible and the invisible. Pythagoras believed that the world was not made of matter, but of proportion and harmony, the additions of the soul. When we perceive beauty in a circle, a melody, or a just deed, that is the moment we hear the voice of the universe speaking through the language of mathematics. God geometrizes continually. Plato, Timaeus 47 bis, and the world, through the eyes of Pythagoras, is an endless symphony. Each star a note, each living being a tone, and each soul a part of the eternal harmony. When we live in rhythm, love in balance, and think in order, we cease to be the listener and become the song itself. To understand number is to touch eternity,